OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Yeah, the Dubs have certainly changed the game. Ho, 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 it's 6 in a row. How does that feel this morning? 0879 180 180. We'd love to hear from you if you're a fan or a supporter or from any county other than Dublin, or indeed if you're a Dub. Feel free to rub everybody's nose in it because you can. 6 in a row on Saturday and 4 in a row on Sunday. Owen, what are the natives in Kerry saying? How do they feel about watching this? The silence, the eeriness, the unstoppable juggernaut nature of this whole thing?
Well, the silence and eeriness is almost fitting, I'd imagine, for what a lot of people feel about it, which is an unexpected, or a very expected, I should say, procession towards an All-Ireland title, which I guess became apparent that this would happen maybe after around 50 minutes on Saturday. And calling it a procession is unfair because it was a contest for a lot of the game, but I think it kind of sums up the season as a whole, how everybody from about a month ago would have expected Dublin to do this, and they went ahead and did this. This is the one thing about this team that you can't take away from them, is that when you expect them to do something, they generally show up and just get it done. No external factor ever seems to waver them off course, and like, you run out of superlatives to describe them. They're the greatest now, and there was maybe a bit of debate last season. I think it's very hard to make that debate now that they aren't the greatest team of all time.
Yeah, and like, the trouble is that they're not the greatest team of all time finished. It's not like we're looking back on that. We're in the middle of it. We're bang smack in the middle of it. It feels like. You would also have said, though, when Kilkenny absolutely roasted Waterford, that it felt like we were in the middle of that cycle. There is going to be a completely different team next year. If you look at many of the players who didn't get game time, who are veterans, traditionally what's happened is that they have stuck around with this Dublin team for one season, tried to get back in the team, not made it back in the team, and then mostly they've gone away from being part of the panel. So next year's panel will certainly look different. Next year's team might look a tiny bit different, but not that much different.
I think this is at its most fearsome at the moment, the prospect of what Dublin can do, because you talk about those people who've been in and around panels in the past, and they might have been getting on a bit, and they've hung around to try and get into the match day 23, try and pick up their All-Ireland medal, and the reason why they're on the bench mostly is because they're not as good as they were previously. The difference this year is it's not Bernard Brogan trying to get off the bench on All-Ireland final day, it's Paul Mannion trying to get off the bench on All-Ireland final day. That is an absolutely terrifying prospect, that this is now the profile of player that you have on the bench. This is one of the finest forwards in the country. And let's not even get started on the fact that Brian Howard was somebody that was sprung off the bench. Like, it's hard to even know if that's the correct call on a big game like Saturday. It would feel like scoreboard journalism just to completely write off everything as the correct decision. It almost feels like it surely can't be the correct call to have Brian Howard on the bench in any game. But maybe this is actually just where Dublin are at, that the quality of players are people in their peak, young men in their peak who are actually on the bench, who are making up the numbers, and a handful of people who probably won't even get into the squad. So this is why it is at its most terrifying if you're not from Dublin. This is why it looks like it is going to be harder than ever to take them down. And with Kilkenny and them getting beaten in 2010, I guess 2009 there was a sign that they might have got beaten. Last year might have been that sign that Dublin could have got beaten, getting pushed to a replay. This year they've actually used that experience, it seems, and made themselves much better.
It will be a completely different squad, though. You can, like, it's always stupid to name names of players who you think are going to retire, and it's obviously completely their decision. But many of the players who have 6 or even 8 All-Irelands who didn't get game time, who just got a minute or two of game time, they're going to be gone, you would expect, from the panel, and therefore they're going to be gone from the training sessions, and therefore they're going to be gone from that knowledge, that game management, that coaching that they've had, that culture that they've brought. That'll be gone. So you will still have the starting 15 and Mannion and Howard. But after that, is there a point where you can't just lose and leach out all of that knowledge and it be exactly the same thing?
Well, I think that the knowledge is probably shared around enough at this point, isn't it? That it's so well ingrained in the group that no individual holds a bigger slice of the pie of that experience and that knowledge than anybody else. Like, I guess it does help for sure that those players who had to get over the line in 2011 probably had to figure things out a little bit more for themselves than the current crop of youngsters. It's much harder to get over the line the first time. And maybe you can't actually teach that. And maybe when you lose those sorts of players and those sorts of characters, of course, there's going to be a drop-off. But it's just very hard to see any evidence of that. Like, where is the evidence that the younger players who've come in have been offered in any way? Like, there would have been a great suspicion last year that if Dublin ever lost Jack McCaffrey, that there would just inevitably be a drop-off because he's so bloody good. And
there was a drop-off, though. So Robert McDade had a great semi-final, but he's not Jack McCaffrey. Like, Jack McCaffrey is a game-changing, you know, elite, one of the top 4 or 5 footballers in the country. And we've kind of got to this point where we just go, oh, Robert McDade is just as good, but he actually isn't. And that's fair, I think, and that's not in any way a slight on him. He's an excellent footballer. He is, like, a starter on most inter-county teams, but he's not Jack McCaffrey. And so if you're game planning for Dublin next year, you're not game planning for McCaffrey, and you're not for Brogan or Michael Dara or Philly or a bunch of other players who McManaman, like who aren't going to be there forever, right? And maybe it's not next year that some of those players are who retire. Maybe it's after that, and obviously some of them are already gone. But I don't think that the carousel is just popping out the all-time greats the way that it was.
Well, I think McCaffrey's a bad example because he walks away in the prime of his career. Like, this is the players you're talking about: Philly McMahon, Kevin McManaman.
Bugler's good. Bugler's a really good footballer, really, really good footballer. But is he Paul Flynn level? I'm not sure. Like that, and that he's the replacement for him.
Well, Brian Howard is.
Paddy Small is good, but is he Brogan level? He probably isn't. Howard could well be as good as Fenton, right?
Yeah.
I'm endlessly impressed by Howard, and it's, look, if he has the desire and application to go on and never lose a game, then it's right there for him as well if he wants it. But, you know, so Howard is. But if you start going down the line, they're not all as good as they were.
They're not all as star-studded in terms of their individual talents, it seems, or...
Help me out here. I'm trying not to be facing.
Well, no, I'm not going to be
12 in a row, right?
I can't help you out here. I'm sorry. I can't. I haven't woken up this morning and thought, oh, you know what? You know, everything looks hopeful.
Well, it's not. And I'm not. Like, I just want to watch a game where they're put to the pin of their collar properly, because they weren't. Like, Mayo didn't put them to the pin of their collar properly. They gave them a bit of trouble in the first half. Then they had a man up, and then what? What did they do? And
yet, that little bit of trouble that was caused was just the greatest feeling ever. It's just so good to see this team push to the pin of their collar, and it's happened, 4 or 5 times in the lifespan of this run. Is there not a lot of patronising of Mayo going on here? Oh, yeah, geez, we're great lads for 50 minutes, aren't you? Like, no, that's not good enough. If you're going to win, you have to be there in the last 2 minutes. Well, it's better than what
Kildare and Meath and everything, but that's not good enough either.
They're top of the pile when it comes to those teams who've been able to push Dublin, really, and like I think that they deserve.
Did they push them in this game? Really? Did they actually push them in this game?
Dublin had to push themselves to beat them and to actually get out in front after 50 minutes. They had to push themselves to get that far. Of course they did. Of course they pushed them at times in that first half. Anybody who watched it knew that they pushed them at times in that first. Like, you concede a goal straight away. Then what is the default position when you haven't won an All-Ireland in 69 years? You're coming up against a team who've won 5 All-Irelands. The default position is you fold the tent.
Well, they could do what Meath did, exactly, in fairness.
And that didn't happen. No. So I think they deserve a bit of slack on that front. And I think that a lot of the commentary, it's almost as if the commentary around Mayo was punishing them for being in the All-Ireland in the first place, and they wouldn't get anywhere near as much stick all winter if they just bowed out in Connacht and said, a weird 2010. If they'd done a Kerry and was like, weird 2020, you know, stuff happens. That's what happens in the year of the pandemic. They will now be punished for being the team that actually found themselves in the All-Ireland final.
Kerry needs to be punished. Kerry needs to be called on a shambles of a year where they had their belly tickled by a Cork team who were no good, it turns out.
Absolutely.
Like, it's a horrific way to go out of the championship. When they had the majority of there's a couple of players missing who might have been able to bring a bit of guile and experience to the front line, but they had most of their big players playing. But
this is why it is unfair to write off Mayo as some sort of I don't know, some sort of lily-livered outfit who don't have the bottle to actually push. Maybe Dublin are 5 times better than Mayo, and maybe Mayo actually cut the the supposed deficit in half, or maybe they didn't lose by as much as Dublin should be beating them by. Maybe that is an option here. Maybe the outcome here, if Mayo were at their very best and at their most courageous, wasn't actually them beating Dublin. Maybe that is the gap here. Just speculating, but there is going to be a lot, there has already been a lot written, and there will continue to be a lot written about this Mayo side and how they're never going to win an All-Ireland. Because of that, they probably won't win an All-Ireland. It's hard to see it happening because of the team that they have to beat to do it. But at the same time, that does not mean that they are this soulless, courageless bunch, because they are. Like, I mean, to concede a goal that early, you're thinking, oh my God, this is going to be me all over again.
So the central thesis of your theory there is that actually this is as good as it gets for Mayo.
Yeah.
A 5-point defeat in the All-Ireland final against Dublin is as good as it gets.
Well, a draw in 2016 as it
But this
turned out.
team now, the new team, this current team, this is as good as it gets. That was the end of what the level of expectation should be. They should always expect, like, if that's it, that's fair enough. But I you know, okay, so you think that they did achieve as well as they possibly can in the All-Ireland final on Saturday night?
Not far off it, yeah. Like, and I fear that this as a group have achieved everything that they're going to achieve by winning the 2 of the 3 trophies that you can win in Gaelic football. They've won those, but the main one, it just doesn't look like it's going to be prized away from Dublin at any point unless a team puts up an unbelievable performance that far exceeds their own level. And I don't think that the level that far exceeds Mayo's level is going to be good enough to knock Dublin off on song. And that is the key point here, is that Dublin never seem to be off tune for a full All-Ireland final. Yes, they've gone through patches here and there, but when the real questions should be asked in the last 30 minutes of the game, Dublin just tend to find things, things tend to click for them. And they have had bad moments in All-Irelands and still look like that they're not going to get beaten.
Yeah, I think that sometimes those bad moments in All-Irelands, like if you think back to the 2 own goals game, Dublin weren't great in that game. Like, I think sometimes they got in their own heads a little bit. I think they really weren't great in the game against Kerry in the drawn game last year, and they had a man sent off, and still, that's a little bit the type of thing that should be giving us hope. But none of the other counties have managed to put together the 80-minute performance that you require in an All-Ireland final with all the stuff that goes around it. And I don't know if we actually cut too much slack to those counties for not doing that. That actually, you're grand, you're great. Like, were Dublin in this year's All-Ireland final much better than they were in that drawn game last year? They were a bit better, but they weren't much better, were they?
I'd go along with that. I don't think that they put in an All-Ireland final performance this year that was, like, I think maybe in the replay last year they were definitely better than they were at the weekend. And I don't think you can say that there was just such a higher level of performance. The thing is, and maybe this is a criticism of everybody else, it's the consistency with which they manage to apply themselves and manage to fight for every ball and do the right thing. It's like everybody else is rolling a dice, and it's a regular dice, and Dublin are rolling a dice and it's constantly a 5 or a 6. Like, they will always be at an unbelievably high level, even when they're at their worst. And when other teams have off days, and Mayo have had them, they can absolutely be destroyed. And that happened to them in 10 minutes last year. It happened to them against Kerry last year. Granted, they were tired for both of those games. But Mayo and every other team and every other county in Ireland, except for Dublin, just seems to have a bottom level which allows you to get absolutely destroyed. And if you go up against Dublin with that capacity to go through periods of games where you can be destroyed, you really don't have a hope of winning an All-Ireland. And that's the sort of bleak way of looking at it. But Dublin are very good, all the same.
They are. Are they going to be as dominant next year? I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe McDade and Paddy Small become better footballers with the experience of this All-Ireland final, and next year do step up a level where all of a sudden you're like, actually, that's not a step down from Brogan in the corner and from Jack McCaffrey. I don't know, but it's getting to the point though where those other counties really need to put in a more significant effort. Like Donegal should have been in an All-Ireland semi-final this year, and we should see what their level is against Dublin. But again, they're kind of getting away with it because the Cavan story was a great story, and fair play to Cavan. You know, they did exactly what you would do trying to beat that Donegal team, and they beat them. But like, Donegal need to be looking at each other this winter and going, what the hell? Like, what the hell happened there? And Tyrone need to be looking at themselves going, here. Like, now obviously Tyrone have made a significant change, and you would hope that McShane and McKenna are fully fit for the full season next year, and that together they can create something where 40, 60 balls into that full forward line suddenly become goal scoring opportunities. And maybe that's a game that we can look at and go, okay, Dublin are going to be up on the rack for the last 5 minutes of the game, because I'd like to see that.
But the last semi-final that Donegal played in was the day they beat Dublin. Like, they haven't even got to that point again, which is ridiculous. Like, their finest hour, like the one team that managed to actually beat this team, they haven't even got back there yet. Tyrone the same. Like, it almost makes sense now, kind of looking at on Saturday's performance, that Tyrone probably did need a change. Even people who love Mickey Hart probably actually to make a change and to sort of make a decision to sort of, I guess, again, that analogy, roll the dice and just see what you get next year rather than sticking with the same thing. And the same goes for Kerry, having had a really desperate year. Like, the pressure is on them big time next year. And for those reasons, and for like when you look at those counties, that's why I think Mayo deserve a little bit of slack. Like, they have actually managed to hold their nerve all season, and we just don't know how much they bottled it on Saturday, because maybe Dublin are actually even better than what they showed.
I definitely think there's a workable theory that was as good as it's going to get for Mayo, and that was their chance. That was their moment with a man up at the start of the second half to push forward and to take the game, and they didn't do it, and they're always going to regret that. We'll talk about that a little bit later on with Kieran Donaghy just after 8 o'clock this morning. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. It is the 21st of December, and we're looking back at an All-Ireland football final. That's coming your way 8:05. Pressure rankings at 8:35. Alan Quinlan's going to talk to us about an unbelievable Munster performance, which I think most people missed because the All-Ireland football final was on at the same time. Dessie Farrell's going to join us at 9:15 alongside Philly McMahon from Temple Street. Obviously, the traditional visits of the All-Ireland winning captains and teams to the kids' hospitals can't happen because of the coronavirus, so we're helping to facilitate that this morning, and we'll bring you that all the way up until 10 o'clock this morning. We'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the number. Now, let's turn our attention to soccer, because the Premier League had one of those wild weekends where the goals were going in crazy numbers. David Meyler is with us. David, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, lads.
Let's start with Manchester United, who looked pretty good when they scored 2 goals in the first 3 minutes of games.
I know, it was unbelievable, wasn't it? What a game to watch. You know, it's just every game I've watched Leeds this season have been exciting, and certainly, you know, United more when they've been away from home rather than home, because they're away, or their home form hasn't been great. They just good on the counter attack, and you've got to give Solskjaer some credit. He starts Dan James. There are a lot of question marks were raised before the game, and then he puts in a fantastic performance where they just looked to isolate Leeds with, obviously certainly with Bielsa's system of this man-to-man marking, and then you get players one-on-one in situations, and then I felt like Dan James has pace to burn, and it was just an unbelievable game, and United looked really good, and it was a really good game to watch.
Can we learn stuff from games like this that are as crazy as that?
I don't think you can learn a lot from that. No, just even though it finished up 6-2, you're kind of looking back. If you were to be realistic, it could have been 9-4, 9-5. Martial had another handful of chances. I don't think there's a lot you can take from it. Of course, the big thing I think Bielsa he won't change his philosophy. You saw from his post-match interview that he said this is the way we play. I don't have to justify it. It was almost, the opposing manager has neutralised me. I think the words he used. It's just they need to probably slightly tweak it. And then of course, when you go to Old Trafford, even though United are struggling at home, it's always a tough place to go. Of course, there's no fans, which gives teams that little lift. But for United to score 2 goals after 3 minutes, it's just it doesn't get better than that.
When you say he needs to tweak it a little bit, Bielsa, what do you mean by that? Because it does seem that it's a little bit more than tweaks that are required to arrest a game that could have ended 12-4.
Yeah, it's just I think the most frustrating thing for him yesterday was United's goals. A lot of them came from mistakes from Leeds players. So if you're not making those mistakes and you're not turning over possession, and then at times they were just too slow to get back. Now, when you have Rashford, Martial, Dan James, people like that with the pace they have, if you do turn over possession and you're not breaking a gut to get back, then you're going to find it difficult and you're going to struggle. And look, that's the reason why United were so good on the counter attack, and they just killed them off as early as they could.
How good are Manchester United at forcing those mistakes?
I think look, you have to give them credit, because if you don't press someone, then they're not going to make mistakes. So they did get that right. But a lot of it was just, sloppy play from Leeds. But, in the games that they've played, they've been exciting to watch. They're great entertainment. Every game they play, you kind of want to watch them. If you were to compare them to, say, Spurs, where they're sitting deep and they're trying to catch, teams on the counter-attack. United, and the Leeds game was just fantastic. It was one of those you couldn't take your eyes off it, because you just felt at any moment either team could score. And even if you're looking at it, when United were so dominant at half-time before, we're not, you're just feeling like, Leeds could go on here and score a couple of goals. They could come back into the game. You just never knew.
Scott McTominay yesterday with his couple of goals was immediately compared to both Roy Keane and Paul's goals. So like instead of the one, they go for the two straight away. Where is this like a landmark moment for him? Is this just a symptom of the madness of the game that he happened to be playing in? What do you put that down to, and how much do you read into a performance like that yesterday, David?
I think you have to take a lot from it, really. If you look at the midfielders United have with McTominay, Fred, Matic, Pogba, Donny van de Beek, of course, Bruno, you're immediately going, it's Bruno and Pogba, and then there's one other. And then you're kind of thinking, well, they've spent a lot of money on Donny van de Beek. How are we going to fit the three of them into the system? But if you look at all the big games, he's played McTominay and Fred. So it just shows the trust he has in McTominay. The work he puts in is phenomenal. He's a very unselfish player. Like, you could almost see, when he got his goals, like the whole team are, jubilant for him. They're ecstatic, because he's just that type of character you want around the place. The one who puts in the hard yards for his teammates. And on top of that, he's a cracking player as well. He's really kicked on leaps and bounds. And it just shows, the trust that Solskjaer has in him, that he's playing him regularly. But not only that, he's standing up and he's putting in good performances, and he's not leaving the manager down.
It's kind of remarkable that we're in this place where Manchester United seem deserving of their place in second place after what was a really poor start to the season. People have questioned their fitness at the start of the season, and I guess there was a lot of excuses made. We obviously had the Spurs hammering of United, and yet here they are. The table doesn't lie, as the old cliche goes, and they're in second place. They've scored more goals than everybody else in the league, with the exception of Liverpool as well. This looks like something that is very much sustainable in terms of them at least finishing second this season.
Yeah, well, look, as you're talking about the table, if you're going to look at the form guides, away from home, they're a fantastic team. Obviously they can afford to sit deep, and like I spoke about the pace that they have with these players, and they've got, with Bruno, Pogba, those kind of fellas in midfield, they can create chances for other players. It's just the big thing is the home form. If they can sort that out and start picking up more wins at home, then certainly they can be up there, in the top 2-3. But at the moment, I can't really see anyone catching Liverpool, with the form they're in.
We'll talk about Liverpool in just 1 second. It's the City is obviously the other team really who are more likely to finish second, and actually over the course of the season, it looks like they could push Liverpool. Or does it? Like, I'm really struggling to work out. I thought 2 weeks ago Manchester City were getting back to a level of form and aggression and control, and then not a great performance in the derby, and then a couple of other not great performances, but a scratchy win at the weekend of the type that title teams are supposed to be able to do. I can't tell if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
No, Ger, I'm the exact same as you. I was on with JD, I think, a week or two ago on Saturday, and I kind of felt like Man City were capable of putting together 4 or 5, wins in a row, but just at the moment they're just too hot and cold. Like, you've got to give Southampton, some credit as well. They're a very good team in, fine form, and they're very difficult to play against. But I just sat down and I watched, large part of the second half of Man City. It's just it's overemphasis at times to, score the perfect goal. There's times when they were counter-attacking and, De Bruyne puts through Sterling, and then he's trying to square it to Bernardo, and then he's trying to square it again, where it's just thinking, just one of you put your, foot through the ball and, have a shot, try and score the goal. I just don't know what it is. Look, they are missing Aguero. When he's fully fit and they can get him in a run of games, he will score goals. He's proved that time after time. But they just, I don't know what it is. I remember I watched one game, I think it was when they played the Manchester derby against United. Gary Neville touched on. We're almost talking about, the City team of years ago, kind of, the losses they've had with Company, Silva, Yaya Toure, those that were always we're referring to the older teams, like in cases with Liverpool in the past, with Manchester United. It's, can they turn that corner, and can they mount a serious challenge against Liverpool, who are Premier League champions? That is the question. There's no doubt that they'll probably look to strengthen in January again, because we all know that Man City will spend money if it's available, which it more than likely is. It's just Pep Guardiola needs to find a way to get those players, firing at all cylinders, and putting in the performance that we know they are capable. Because at the moment they just seem very happy to have 75% possession and just keep knocking the ball around without kind of putting teams to the sword.
Yeah, and last week when Liverpool stumbled, you felt like that was a real opportunity for City to put down a marker, and they didn't. And Liverpool's stumble appears to be over. Crystal Palace have been, so far, a very difficult team for most teams to break down, but not that Liverpool team, and not with Minamino scoring. It's like, what's going on here?
Well, I think, if you watch that Liverpool game, yes, they won 7-0 or whatever, and it does look flattering. If anyone was, kind of one of them where you turn on the teletext and you just kind of see the result, you think, geez, Liverpool have wiped the floor. Now, of course, 7-0 is a huge result, but Liverpool score goals in the first half at key moments. There were times that, Crystal Palace were in and they should have probably equalised there, got something more out of the game. There was a couple of chances. Ayew could have squared one back to, Zaha. He puts the ball 2 yards behind him. Zaha's coming in off the left wing. He puts a cross in that Ayew doesn't get the end of. There were moments where Palace did get in behind Liverpool and cause them problems, but they just didn't score. And then Liverpool were just going on the pitch and scoring, and they just took it out of sight. And then, of course, there's that. Look, it's never nice to be on a pitch when you're getting hammered like that. You could just sense that there was a period in the second half for about 20-25 minutes where, the Crystal Palace players just kind of gave up. Nobody was closing down. They were kind of all pointing at the other fella. You do it, I'm not doing it. And then even if you look, there was an incident with Van Aanholt and Trent Alexander-Arnold. It was just before Firmino's goal. But, I think Trent kind of kicked the ball towards him and he was kind of kicking off. And then, they take the throw, they turn over possession. The ball goes, I think it's Firmino plays it wide to Robertson. He breaks up the pitch and then it's just boom. Liverpool are so lethal on the counter-attack. But it was just a lot of petulance from Crystal Palace. But it's just one of those games that Roy Hodgson will just have to dust them down and kind of move on from it. If you saw Milahojevic's interview after the game, he said, look, Liverpool conceded 7, United conceded 6. These teams have, had big losses and they bounced back. So it'll be the next game for Palace will be important.
That Liverpool performance and the fact that they managed to leave Mo Salah on the bench, they managed to obviously bring him on and he makes a bit of a difference himself as well. It's almost like after Jurgen Klopp and his, I guess, a little bit of a trouble with this fixture in particular, this 12:30 on a Saturday fixture, has almost found himself in a little bit of a flow state with his own selections, and knowing that no matter who he puts out on the pitch, there's going to be a very close to a top level of a performance from them. Like, even without Diogo Jota being available, he thought that's the only scenario in which Mo Salah can be left on the bench, is if Jota is available, and that's not the case. Like, it does seem that even this year there's a greater cohesion amongst the squad and a greater ability to get more from your bench or from your second string players.
Well, you say second string players, yes, if you look at the team that played against Palace, like Van Dijk and Gomez come straight in at centre half. Now, the question is then, right, do you bring Fabinho forward? And then you've obviously they played Henderson, Keita and Wijnaldum. Like, that three in midfield could play and Fabinho could be on the bench. Of course, you could play Fabinho, push Henderson forward. He chose to rest Salah, but they're missing probably, I would say, 3 there last weekend of their starting 11, their main starting 11. Now, to be able to rest Salah and then bring him on in around the 60th mark, and then he just gets 2 goals. It's just, of course, they are missing players. Like, but even then, Jota, even if he was fit and the form he's in, is he starting? Do you know what I mean? It's such a difficult one because Jurgen now has 14, 15 players all playing at such a high level. Where they're turning out performances. I've sat on here with you guys talking about Firmino. Yes, his all-round gameplay is fantastic, but he needs more goals, or he needs to. That's what Jota was bringing, and now Firmino started, to score. It's an exciting time for a Liverpool fan because, you know, at the time they're really turning out results and they're all putting in performances and they're all, you know, the front boys are all contributing with goals and assists.
And that's interesting when you compare that to the Manchester City situation, where if Liverpool had a similar injury problem or were missing somebody like Aguero, as talismanic as he is for Manchester City, there is just a sense that this Liverpool team would be able to overcome something like that in a much better way than how Manchester City have seemingly stumbled as a result of a couple of injuries.
No, definitely. That's the big thing. You look. Sterling hasn't put up the numbers that we're used to seeing him doing. Aguero, of course, like I said, has been injured for large periods of the season. Where, you know, he is someone that guarantees you 20 Premier League goals. Now the question mark would be like if Liverpool were to pick up an injury to Mane or Salah, how would they cope? Like if they were to lose the two of them, it would be like a massive blow because look, the goals they score, the work they do, the assists they get, everything is just. And then you look at like even the last day when he brings, you know, Mane off, there was a lot raised about, look, he looks angry about it. He looks annoyed at Klopp, but that's his elite mentality. That's the one kind of like, hold on, I've not scored in 9 games. I'm after scoring today. I want more, you know? And then of course, Salah comes on, gets 2 goals. Of course, there's that little bit, as much as we laugh and joke about watching the fullbacks where they have this little competition between, you know, who gets more assists. You know, there's no doubt that Manny and Salah are looking at one another saying, I want to outscore, you know, him, which is good as long as it doesn't overboil, which I think Jurgen Klopp will be able to manage because if you remember a few weeks ago, he took Salah off. I think it was against Fulham and he wasn't happy either. So look, Liverpool are in a good place and, you know, they're, like I said, their players are, you know, in fine form.
On Spurs then, lost yesterday to Leicester City. It's been a bad few days for them. Is this a blip, David, or has this been coming for a little while, do you think?
I think the performance of Spurs was kind of like, you know, the Spurs that had played a few seasons ago. They were obviously after, you know, dropping points against Palace, losing to Liverpool in the manner which they did. And then it was kind of like, you know, it was refreshing to kind of, like I said, you know, it looked like Mourinho had his mojo back, that kind of like, you know, those mind games, the performance they were putting in, they just came unstuck against Leicester. And then there were periods when, you know, they're in the game, but you can't afford to give away penalties like they did. You know, Aurier, it's just, I didn't watch the full game. I saw, you know, a good chunk of it, but like there were times when I watched, you know, Aurier against Mane where, you know, he nullified him. You know, he was firing and like he put in an outstanding performance against Liverpool, and then he'd go and he'd make them mistakes. And then when you've got players like, you know, Jamie Vardy, who's, you know, taking penalties or whatever, you know, he's 9 times out of 10 he's going to score. And then it just suited, you know, Leicester. I did see Vardy speak after with the game plan where they were going to kind of drop to their own halfway line and leave Tottenham have possession and go after them. It's just at times when Tottenham seem to have too much of the ball, they kind of come unstuck where they, you know, they're not creating chances and they're just getting punished on counter-attacks. So Mourinho's a bit similar to Bielsa in a way. He's going to have to tweak a little bit to find a way to get them when they do have large amounts of possession that, you know, they don't get caught in counter-attacks and then they do punish teams when they get opportunities. Because, look, you know, Tottenham have fantastic forwards in Heung-min Son and Harry Kane. They shouldn't have to play counter-attacking football in order to beat teams.
It's not the end for Spurs, though, is it? Or because Liverpool are back into this, we're going to win every game pretty easily and we're irresistible. Can you afford to be beaten by Leicester and still be title contenders?
Yeah, but you could on the flip side of that, you know, Tottenham could turn around, or Tottenham fan could turn around to you and say, you know, Liverpool were beaten by Aston Villa.
A long time ago now, though, that's the thing. Since then, Liverpool have kicked in.
True, but at the same time, you know, it is, look, it's a tough last 3 games where, you know, you only pick up 1 point. Of course, you don't want to be getting beat if you're going to be serious title contenders. But I never felt that Tottenham would win the Premier League. I do feel they'll still be up, you know, thereabouts pushing for 2nd and 3rd. I don't think any other team have enough for Liverpool. But it's, look, if you look at the table from now, and then if you look at it probably in the middle of January with these amount of fixtures coming with a busy Christmas period, you know, teams, whichever team can kind of go, you know, you play Stephen's Day, you'll play the 28th, you'll play the 1st. If you can pick up, you know, 3 wins there will be massive movements in the table. So it's not the end of the world. It's just, it's what a Spurs. This is there'll be a question mark over their character. How can you bounce back? Do you know what I mean? You have to get back to winning ways and get that done as quick as you can.
All right, well, let's see. Good stuff, David. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.
David Meyler with us there, giving us his thoughts on the weekend's Premier League action. 0879 180 180 is the number if you want to get in touch with us this morning. And today and up until Christmas, we're giving you the chance to win a one-for-all gift card from your local post office. It's the perfect last-minute gifting option for family, friends and colleagues this Christmas, and they'll be available for purchase from post offices nationwide right up until closing time, which is 1 p.m. on Christmas Eve. We'll announce a winner on OTB AM before 10 o'clock this morning. To enter, all you have to do is tell us who our mystery voice is.
If something will happen, then it will happen. There are so many rumours in the newspapers, and it's really funny.
Not happy with the gossip columns. Who's that? Text us on 0879 180 180 and tell us your name and his name, and you can be in with a chance of winning our one-for-all gift card from your local post office. Still to come this morning, we're going to talk rugby with Alan Quinlan. We're going to hear from Aishling Moloney and David Brady in Croke Park, breaking down the All-Ireland final. Kieran Donaghy next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
OTB.
In 1927, Cavan Coolidge was President of the United States, and it was the last time Dublin beat Cork in the All-Ireland Hurling Championship. They have met in the championship on 15 occasions, with Cork victorious.
Now then, you're welcome along to Scoreboard Jungle. This is our GAA quiz. It's run throughout the Inter-County Championship. We have 3 people tied on the top of the leaderboard. Dr. Con Murphy, Noel O'Leary and Claire Egan, all on 10 points. Delighted to welcome, no pressure, CEO of the GPA. So, I mean, how much do you really care about your members? Paul Flynn, how you doing?
Hey, Joe, how are things?
So this is very simple. 2 rounds. We won't take long here. Round 1 is take your points. Basically, 5 questions, 30 seconds, 1 point per correct answer.
Very good.
Okay, your time starts now. Who is Dublin's second highest scorer in the 2020 championship so far?
Kieran Kilkenny.
Name either wing forward from the 2015 All-Star team.
Dermot Connolly.
Former Mayo footballer Kevin O'Neill played for which Dublin club in the 2000s?
Nafina.
How many points did Dublin concede in the first half of the 2020 Leinster final against Mayo?
7.
2 points. It wasn't a classic. 2 points conceded in the first half of the Leinster final. So, who was Dublin's second highest scorer in the 2020 championship? You said Kieran Kilkenny. That was absolutely correct. Name a wing forward from the 2015 All-Star team. It was either Matty Donnelly or Dunica Walsh. So Dermot was robbed that year, unless he was in the full forward line. But wing
Could have been centre.
Could have been centre, yeah. Kevin O'Neill did play for Nafina. Dublin conceded just 2 points in the Leinster final, and we didn't get your last question. Sorry, we ran out of time. So you have 2 points thus far. You can make it up in this round. This is sudden death, but you get 3 points per correct answer. So if you get it right, you get your 3 points. You move on to the next one. If you get it wrong, you're out, and you make off with 2 points. So this is
No pressure.
and there's no pressure. This is cruel. Okay. There have been far worse scores, by the way, trust me. Okay, the going for goal round. Your time starts now. Who was the Footballer of the Year in the year 2000?
Oh, Christ. Shames.
Correct. I'll give it to
Dave
you.
Moylan.
Yes, correct. I'll give it to you.
Yeah. Oh.
This one's tricky. Cavan captain Raymond Galligan plays for what club?
Pass. Cavan Gales.
Unlucky. Lacking.
Knacking.
Seamus Moynihan has put some very absolute respectability on your score of 5 points, which is far from terrible. So 5 points.
Oh.
You're off the hook. Good man.
Great stuff.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for that, Paul. We'll see you again. Cheers.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
10 minutes past 8 here this morning on OTBM. Let's get to the big story of the weekend, and that is a irresistible performance from the Dubs. Kieran Donaghy, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, how are you, Ger?
Yeah, good. It's Dublin's world and the rest of us just living it.
That's for sure. That's for sure. When you win 6 in a row, it's pretty humbling for everybody else to be watching on. But look, there's not much that hasn't been said about them, Ger. They're a serious squad and outfit, and ahead of most others when it comes to the thinking part of the game, and then as well the obvious attributes of the physicality, the power, the strength, the speed, the squad, the backroom setup, sponsorship, etc. They're ahead of everybody in most areas.
Let's talk about the game before we get into all the other stuff. How well did Mayo do?
They did a lot well. Ger, they did, I think it's a good question. If you think of how they kind of started the game, it was nightmaric stuff. The parting of the Red Sea, as Dublin do from the set play, from the throw-in, creating that space in the middle is something that is, they've done a lot now. And teams need to wise up to what's dangerous on a football pitch, and that's the ball. Last year we saw Kerry marking guys running out towards the sideline to clear space, and fellas going with them. We the same. You see, and it's understandable in a way, but just this is where the thinking part of the game has to come in. When you're told before a game, Ger, like it's an All-Ireland final, you're marking Conor Callaghan, you're marking Kieran Kilkenny. You need to be tight early. You need to do this. You need to do that. You need to watch where the ball is the most important thing, and you need to play for your team and take your own side of it out. And if you're marking any defending in any game that I know of, you see the man, you see the ball, this Dublin team now is running down the middle of teams, and it's fine when they do it from normal play and they just overpower you. But a lot of this can be stopped early if teams realise what's happening and do what Dublin do and scramble to the zone, the scoring zone. We talked about it last week, about how quickly they get to the scoring danger area if they're breached. They went down the middle and got that early goal after 13 seconds. And in fairness to Mayo and to the youngsters, right after that, Aidan O'Shea goes out after getting beaten and the goal goes out and has a massive catch in the middle of the field and dinks it over, and we end up with Aishling Moloney passing it over the bar. He jogs back out, hops off Con once or twice on the way out, wins a huge 50-50 kick out between the two of them, and sets up Mayo again for another score. And all of a sudden, a lovely ball in, and Killian O'Connor maybe could have forced the agenda with goal, even though a point was everything in where they were at that stage of the game. They did remarkably well to get back into it, and they were level by the 30th minute. And with Dublin, then again, just they do this, Ger, when you threaten them or when you get close to them, their key guys and their key players really step up. And even right before the break for half time, Kilkenny got a massive point where he goes out and wins a hard ball off a beautiful play from Scully on the outside of the right boot in over the top of everybody. When they counter it at speed and they've got ball winners like Kilkenny and Con inside, they can do that. And he took Mullen on in along the in line, and Mullen was outstanding the last day. Took him on in along the in line, recycled back out, and then took two of them on again. And banged over a point, and a real score of intent, I would call it, Ger. Before the break, they rattled them big time.
How naive was I to think that this was actually going to be something that would go right down to the line? Like, were you thinking that as well? That, like, when, as you mentioned there, that things were nip and tuck, at least in that middle third of the first half, that this was going to go all the way down to the wire? Or did you see signs at that point that it was like, no, Dublin are going to get to a position here soon enough where they will be able to pull away?
Yeah, well, we kind of flagged it during the preview about, the benches, and it was only when you were there, when we were going through it at the start, and we found out that Michael Darragh McCauley was in, and we started kind of going through the benches, and you knew Fionn McDonough was out injured. They were missing one or two more, and you just look at Dublin's bench. It's just, it's a scary part of it. So, definitely, we were all hoping that we get a close enough game, and look, we got it for as long as probably we were going to get it for 55 minutes, because when you're bringing on, Howard, Mannion, Baskel, Cormac Costello, McMahon, and Mayo are bringing on guys that are unproven and really have been good players in this early part of their careers, but are unproven at All-Ireland final level to go win you a game. James Carr didn't do anything, didn't play much all year, was struggling with injury. Michael Plunkett, for me, was the one that, James Horn did a tremendous job and got so much right and was brave, and you have to commend him for that. But I think this morning and yesterday morning, he'd probably be looking back at the Michael Plunkett switch and how that next 10 minutes went after half time.
What should they have done?
For my part, when you're 2 points down and this Dublin team, like, you're not going to beat this Dublin team really trying to go hoping that you're going to go into the 70th and 75th minute. We've done that with Kerry. Mayo have done that before. Dublin have that experience to see games out. I would say tight games. They've been really good at that since they got that one in 2011. It's a hallmark they have. They go into a really calm place at that stage of the game. They know exactly what they're about. They know exactly what they're trying to work. And I would have gone tried to be really aggressive, put on another forward, make Dublin drop one of their guys back on that forward, and create kind of nearly +2 out the middle of the pitch. I would have put Aidan O'Shane at full forward and try to go long and direct and play your extra man in around him, and go for it, because let's face it. I was talking to our producer with Sky, Kieran O'Hara, and he was kind of saying, Mayo need goals staying. I think they might look for them. And his score prediction had them getting 3. And when they didn't get a sniff of a goal chance all day in the first half in particular, you would have said maybe that a more aggressive line and a more maybe trying to win in All-Ireland and trying to do something to really upset them at the start of that second half, because we know that they are the best at reformulating at half-time. They get their big screen in the dressing room, and they're getting their clips up, and they're getting to see what mistakes are made, and they talk about how to rectify them and ensure they don't happen again. They would have been feeling comfortable 2 points up, and they would have said, look, listen, if we can get there, and they their own kind of playing this, and this is where their scenario training, I'd say, is serious, where they plan for kind of a lot of eventualities. We talked the one about last year, that wasn't a fluke. That was talked about, at least, how much it was worked on, but they definitely talked about being a man down, chasing the game, what you have to do. You have to get your keeper out, you have to push up guys up the pitch. And they talked about this too, that if they're a man down at a crucial part of the game, how are they going to see it out? And when Michael Plunkett went in and sat as a sweeper for the throw-in, I turned to Jim McGuinness I was instantly worried about what I was looking at, because Dublin aren't a junior B team. They're not going to kick the ball down your sweeper's throat. They're not going to really force the issue when they're down a man and they're leading the game. So you kind of have to know what they're thinking as well. But they played it so much on their terms in that first 10 minutes of the second half. Mayo never got energy. They never got goal chances. They never got anything. They chased the ball like shadows, and that's where they needed the extra man up in the forwards to either take Cluxton on, go up, and Cluxton so was man-to-man, and be as brave as you were in the first half and go toe-to-toe. And if you get a turnover with an extra forward up there, you can then maybe look to pounce and try and get a goal and kill the ball and put a full press on Cluxton's kickouts like you were so successful at in the first half, and keep doing that and seeing, could you get a bit of a run in that 10 minutes where could you get a goal in 2 points? Could you get a goal in 3 points? Could you be a few points up when McDade comes back on to see, can you hold on from there?
That was it. Were they spooked by last year's semi-final when that period after the start of the second half killed them, and maybe by what happened in last year's All-Ireland final replay when Merchant scores the goal from the throw-in, that actually that's what the sweeper was there for the first couple of minutes, and then they just forgot to push forward? I don't know. Is it like, was it?
No, I could see James. In fairness, I could see James, and it's a great point, Ger. I could see James. After when it was very evident dawning on us looking in, and I'm sure the same as a very sharp coach like he was looking and going, okay, this isn't working, and you could see him starting to drag him out. But I guess where I'd have the fault is dragging him out at that stage is okay, but it's more an overall team thing on why he's coming out and what are we trying to do. And look, you have to give these guys breaks with the year we had with COVID, with the amount of time they had with their guys on a tactical side of thing. But you could see him pulling him out. But what was he doing when he came out? Who was he picking up? And what was he going to do if he got on a ball? Was he going to be dangerous? Was he going to be dynamic? No, he's, Higgins for me would have been a better guy who's a danger, who's experienced, who's still quick, who can take guys on, who's also defensive minded. I think he would have been possibly a better fit to go in and push up on the ball and use his defending 90 or 100 yards further up the pitch and see, could you get turnovers up there, quick transition, maybe a goal. And that was for me huge. But I could see what Jim or what James was trying to do. He was trying to get him out, but it was kind of too late. And when he came further up the field, he was looking around. He didn't really know what to do. Am I going ball hunting? Are we trying to double the ball? Are we trying to push people down the sideline? Can I be the +1 down the sideline? Do I take the keeper out of it? So there was probably just a few anomalies that I would say that they failed to get in that 10 minutes. And when Dublin, were a point up at the first water break there, Mayo came out and Killian O'Connor got the free to put them level, and after that it was foot in the throat stuff.
Yeah, that's the incredible thing. And like when you look at that bench that was run by Dublin at this point, Kieran, I mean, like there could have been a lot of revisionism had Mayo actually gone on and won this thing about why on earth do you have someone like Brian Howard on the bench. Do you think his impact just simply wouldn't have been as good as if he started those games? Because clearly, regardless of the depth that Dublin have, surely his qualities are good enough to start in any 15 in any era. And you're spot on, but there's a caveat to that, and that's what makes this Dublin team so great, is because they're able to do that, and they're able to guy like Howard, who's carrying a bit of a knock for most of the year, and Mannion, that when this Dublin team is functioning and putting up big scores and guys are putting in good, flawless, unselfish team performances, it's hard to get back into the team barring injury. You're not playing anybody of significance, or they're steamrolling through Leinster. So if you're a guy trying to get your spot back, and you're in a short season and you don't have many in-house games to prove that you're better than the guy on, or like, it's fine to say, of course, he is better and he should be on, and those fellas would start on every team and probably should be starting on the Dublin team. But that's the beauty of the lucky and the privileged position that Dublin are in right now, is they can say to guys everybody knows who should be on and they should be better. Every one of those Dublin guys from 1 to 35 is on their toes, because they know if they get a chance at the blue jersey and they perform, and Robert McDaid is your perfect example. Jack McCaffrey, who spoke unbelievably well with Bernard Brogan a few weeks ago and is a class act on your show, lads, and he was, him stepping away, you were kind of going, okay, and next thing Robbie McDaid comes in and is really solid, does his job, plays for the team, makes all the right decisions, is in the right spots defensively when he needs to be, gets forward when he needs to be, is unselfish up there, makes the right decisions. He's not going to drop his jersey unless he gets a knock. So that's the beauty of where they're at, and that sums up why they're going for 6 in a row when you've got the likes of Howard and Mannion. And Dublin have had this for years with Brogan and Flynn and McCauley and these guys on the bench. Philly McMahon has started a few finals on the bench, but coming on knowing that you're going to get the right amount out of them and what you need out of them. So it's that's why they're as good as they are on.
The Fitzsimons challenge, the general sense that Mayo had that the referee favoured Dublin over them, is that wrong? Because Cillian O'Connor could have been booked in the first half for a challenge as well. Did they even themselves out, or is actually at the key moment a big decision badly missed?
I don't think it's the day where you can talk about decisions. It wasn't as bad as the one on Declan O'Sullivan in 2011 that Ger Eoin executed. It wasn't as bad as the Crowley one in 16, and that was in the last minute with a possible free putting you a pint head with a minute to go, or a minute into injury time. It was a hard hit, and it was unfair, and it should have been a free, and in my eyes a yellow card, because there was no. Yes, it was slightly dangerous, but I don't think there was any malice in Fitzsimons. I think he was going to try and execute what every fullback and what every decent defender should be trying to do there, is absolutely lay him out with a shoulder and a signal of intent for your team and your defenders, the ball to spill up in the air and somebody to grab it. And if there was 80,000 in there, they would have lost their mind. But psychologically for the players, it would have been a huge thing. I don't think it's a day that we can talk about decisions affecting this game. It's what Dublin did from the 50th minute on would be more of where this game was sealed.
It's kind of outrageous when you look at the medal tally now, Kieran. The lads with 8 All-Ireland medals, and there were previous tallies that nobody thought would be surpassed. The Kerry lads are there now on 8 All-Ireland medals with. Like, you would have thought that with every passing year and with every one of those medals that clocks up, there might have been a lessening in standards, or that there would have been new blood required in more areas than there has been. And those lads, from your Cluxtons to your James McCarthy's, it almost seems as if they're the ones still driving this and still the ones more hungry than ever to get their hands on an All-Ireland medal year after year after year. And that is probably one of the biggest contributing factors to why it looks very unlikely that they will be stopped in the near future.
It's some era of players for them from the start of this decade to this year. It's the turnover has been unbelievable when you consider the Flynns and the Brogans and the Alan Brogans and the guys that have already departed away from it, and then you've got the guys that have 8 All-Ireland medals, which is unbelievable. And those guys yesterday, when the game was on the line, were huge. I think McCarthy switched to wing back on Kevin McLaughlin was massive. You had a real size mismatch there around competing for breaks, balls in the air. John Small is a wrecking ball at 6 and is so crafty in everything he does. He'll nail you with a shoulder when he can. He'll go down if you hop off of him in the wrong way to try and draw attention to it. He's got every trick in the book, and kind of nearly what you'd want in your designated 6, that he's kind of, he's right on the edge all the time, and his brain is on overdrive all the time on how to try and win a game for his team by any means necessary. You've won Merchant over at 7, and you bring Howard in along with Fenton in the middle of the field, and you stranglehold the game. And for me, my footballer of the year was Kilkenny. It was going into the game yesterday, and he didn't disappoint. And in the second half of that game, once Mayo, again, when they drew level in that 50th minute, they just refused to say, we're going to have a close game here today. Kilkenny just went out and got balls and just shook his man off and planked it over the bar, and no fuss, back out to 14, hands in the air again, the pressing, the kick out. And his 3 points in the second half were huge plays, along with Howard's beauty on the outside of the right, Mannion coming in off the bench and hitting the screamer from the left. And Dublin didn't score in the last 14 or 15 minutes, you know what I mean? So this wasn't flawless by Dublin in any means. I would say to a man, most of them would say they were solid, they were good, but there's more in them. And that's the scary one. But, the guys that have got their medals, Cluxton, McMahon, James McCarthy, Cian O'Sullivan, Kevin McManaman and Michael Dara McCauley, and I met a few of them in the Croke Park Hotel afterwards. Cian O'Sullivan and Michael Dara and Paddy Andrews were there. And, those guys, there's an overall sense to what they're doing. And there's an overall picture that they're really minding the jersey now for the next guy that comes along. They do all the training. If you're going for their position, and they look outside that and they say, okay, how can I help this guy to be better for Dublin so we can continue this dominance? Even reading Brogan's book was a big part when he was the leadership he showed in his last year, where he wasn't getting in the squad and he's down showing Mannion moves, and he's showing, certain moves, how to get free from your guy. And, you look around a lot of teams and in many sports, and do you have the best guys supporting the newcomers and guys that are starting out their journey? Do you have that in that squad? And that's where Dublin are at, and that's a huge advantage to have when you have total unselfishness within a squad, and that that the bigger picture is always the main one. And
a lot of
these guys.
A lot of that's about to go, right? The players who won the eights, who have the 8 All-Ireland medals, you can see a lot of them stepping away this year, like having reached that milestone. Some of them won't, but if they weren't getting game time, Paddy Andrews, I think, was tweeting about, I'm asking the lads, will I go back for one last year? That was his caption on his tweets, and you don't know. I mean, they all have external lives to playing football for Dublin as well. So if that goes, right, is that quickly replaceable, or is that actually the intangibles that make this special, where you do have Bernard Brogan actually actively helping the players who are replacing him in the squad at the last moment, even though it's breaking his heart to do it?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think you have in that. I think look, this all starts with one man in my eyes, and it has been since he was on a team that lost six or seven finals in a row. And the guy, once he tasted success, Stephen Cluxton, he's just I can see him in that dressing room. I was with him on a rules tour. He is not letting standards slip. He's doing every little thing to keep guys on their toes. Nobody will cross him. And I think he's the key. I think when he goes, whenever he does, and to answer that side of the question, Ger, just 6.5 months, these fellas can be in another All-Ireland final. Yeah. So if you're trying to go for 9 and you have 8, and you're all, most of the guys, Keane O'Sullivan was struggling with a hamstring all year. Macaulay can still do everything you need him to do in that Mayo midfield. If he gets a few league games and puts a bit of a run together, he's dynamic off the bench if that's what you want. He's as strong as a horse. He's unselfish. He want to do everything the team win again and again. All these guys that I'm talking about all have this streak inside in them that it's win at all costs. And yes, we're good guys, and yes, we do everything right. But when we need to be nasty or need to do something, we can do that as well. So they're your perfect guy, and all the great leaders, the Roy Keanes and all that, they all had a bit of that. They could do a bit of everything. And when they needed to go somewhere to ensure that their team win, they would do that as well. This Dublin team have it. Those leaders have instilled this into this whole group, because if all 8 of them go away, or if all 6 or 7 of them go away, you're still left with monsters like, Kilkenny, Howard, Scully, who's one of the smartest players in the country, as well as fittest and skill-wise, Brian Fenton, Dean Rock, Mannion, Merchant, Johnny Cooper. The list goes on, and there's another crew then coming in on the back of that. So, it's whatever they do, they've instilled it in the next group that coming after them, and that's what makes them so good, and that's what makes it look at when teams try and beat them, that you have to get so much right, and you have to hope that they don't absolutely nail every part of their game. And they didn't do that the weekend, Ger. They didn't nail every part. Dublin didn't nail every part of their game the weekend. But when they sniffed out goal chances, they knew when to go for them. And when they needed to see out the game, and when they needed to be smart in that 10 minutes after half-time, they know exactly what's needed at every stage of the game. And that's where teams need to get to on a thinking side of the game, as well as fitness and as well as skills. Yeah.
Look, we're out of time. We will obviously have a long period where we get to talk about the nuances of the funding and the finances and the population and the split question and all that. But for now, we just wanted to talk about the game and the players, and we will come back to all that stuff as well. Is there anything else you want to, before we go here, just to wrap up?
Cluxton 100 games in Croke Park.
Not bad.
Serious stat. You know, a lot of fellas love to get to Croke Park a few times to play, but he's played there 100 times. First year with no goal conceded. That's what when we did in the tactics board last week, how good they are defensively, how quick they get to danger, how quick they get to the area. So this team is supremely athletic and as rightly as you said as well, they're that side of it, Ger, they've all that nailed, the financial, the sponsorship, the making sure their players want for nothing, the making sure their players are in a great frame of mind, making sure their players can sit down as a group after training and, you know, dissect something from the week before, because they all have to go 15 minutes from home. There's no guys driving back from Mayo to Dublin or driving from Killarney down to Drummond Pierce's, or, you know, they have time to sit there and meet and dissect stuff, and they're just a long way ahead. And teams have to try and find a way, whether it's through Zoom, whether defenders are meeting through Zoom, whether one guy is good on the laptop and is putting up clips, and that they're really focusing on what they need to do to become better and to become more cohesive and have an understanding level as these Dublin players have in the pitch. Because rightfully, as you say, all the advantages are there, but when it comes down to winning games, their understanding of what's needed, when it's needed, and that goes back to the rugby tackling incident after Dean Rock kicked the free to go ahead, the incident, as I mentioned last year with Cluxton, and the period this year after half time. They know exactly what's needed at the right stage of the game, and the level of coaching that takes, and the level of study that takes, and challenging yourself up here. I always tell guys, I don't think we challenge GAA teams enough up here. I think we do a bit of tactics and a small bit inside in the room, and it's nearly, oh geez, don't bog them down. No, don't bog them down. And you know, I there's young kids in America that are doing a wide receiver and they need to know 200 plays or 150 plays, and there's basketball boys that need to know 20 offenses and where they are at every stage of the game, and that's done through repetitiveness. It's done through meeting, through talking, through watching game tape back, and I think Dublin do all that better than anybody else as well.
All right, look, we'll let you go. Good stuff. Thanks a million, Kieran. 37 minutes past 8 this morning. The other point about that is if they fix the structures, then Dublin will get more games against better opposition, and they will get better because of that, as opposed to coming in cold to All-Ireland semi-finals and finals the way they are coming through the cakewalk that is Leinster at the moment. 0879 180 180 is the number if you want to get in touch with us. A reminder, the OTB brief is live this morning right now on the OTB Sports app and wherever you get your podcasts, and every morning as well. With all your weekend sports news rounded up, it's released first thing every morning, Monday to Friday, with the top sports stories making the headlines, and it's all thanks to Now TV. Stream over 40 Premier League games this Christmas on Now TV. It's your sport on your terms. Right, so I want to play some of this. It's the Mayo heartbreak piece. David Brady was in Croke Park for us, alongside Nathan, after Mayo fell short again at the final hurdle. Have a look.
History everywhere you look with this Dublin team then. No goals conceded, 6 in a row. Stephen Cluxton, 8 All-Ireland titles now, joining so many of those Kerry greats. So many of these Dublin players have 8 All-Ireland medals now. Coming into this game, Mayo were the same odds to win today as Dublin were to win 10 in a row. Barring some sort of a one-off freak result, like, is 10 in a row now very much something we should be talking about?
No, we shouldn't. We should be talking about next year and how everyone steps up.
But nobody's going to get near them next year. Like, that is as close as the team will get.
No, not at all. Mayo made some very, very elementary mistakes there in serious periods of the game when it's looked back on, and let's not gloss over it. Some naive mistakes. And again, would you do things differently from a point of view as a player, as a manager? Of course you would. You would look at it differently. But again, when people look back in this game, Dublin were there to be got at today. And let no one else think they're not. And if it was a Kerry that was playing them there today, do I think it'd be? I think it would have went down to the wire, maybe even a bit more so, because I think Kerry have a better bench. But if Kerry lost it out against Cork, so you can't play an Ireland final when you lose in Munster, and that's the reality. Maybe that's what we'll see in next year, where the qualifiers continue, or there's a period to come back after you're beaten. Like knockout championship, I thought this year was great, but it's very, very hard to knock out Dublin, no matter what way you take them. They deserve everything. But from your first question is, should we be talking about 10 in a row? No, because people need to watch a lot of that periods of that game and seeing where Mayo could have actually went and competed to the very, very end against Dublin.
Unfortunately, 1 10 in a row has already been completed. 10 All-Irelands without a win for Mayo.
Good start.
It's beyond asking how do they come back from this, because we've seen time and time again they do just come back.
How do you come back? How do you come back next week? How do you go back tomorrow at work if you have a bad day in the office? You get up and you go at it. And you know what? I'd have more hope, let me tell you this now, I'd have more hope in that generation and crop of Mayo players, because they're a lot younger. They've a lot more years ahead of them. Whereas there's in every team, I'm telling you now, you'll see more retirements in the Dublin team this year than you will in the Mayo team, without a doubt. Because there's the youth is there. As I said, Aishling Moloney, you have Owen McLaughlin, you have Tommy Conroy, you have young James Carr, who has a great future. I think James Durkin also has a great future. You have hope. And once you have got kind of that experience now for them young players, 4 or 5 of them playing the first All-Ireland ever, will stand to them. And again, you have. I think this year, Killian O'Connor was excellent throughout. Even today, again marked by one of the best defensive units in the country. But you have to have hope. If everyone decided to throw in the towel every time, they get better. Everyone gets better every year if you don't win the All-Ireland final. Yes, Mayo get to the final because they're constant and they have the ability and they have the quality to get there. They don't have enough to get over the line, and you say, so be it. Let's move on.
2021, vaccine and a Mayo All-Ireland.
You know what? Yeah, we'd want a little bit of a booster in the vaccine. You know what? It's going to be a challenge here for everyone. The league is starting in the last week of February. Championship will be over by July. It's 6 months. Grant says 6 months away. You're going to be in an All-Ireland semi-final. You got yourself. Get up, get on. It'll be Division 2 for Mayo. Something new. I think it will be a challenge because to come back now from an All-Ireland defeat, get into league mode and get into Division 2, you want a quick start. You don't want to lose your first game or your second game in Division 2, because then you're in a dogfight to try and stay up, and you go, Mayo, stay up in Division 2, go down to Division 3, could very well happen. See, that's the thing, and that's the challenge that you have to get up and match.
Great stuff, DB.
A pleasure, and we'll see you next year in the All-Ireland final.
For me, it was a self-imposed pressure.
Was I under pressure? No.
Yeah, they're under pressure. Everyone's under pressure.
OTB AM's pressure rankings with Gillette.
And the big pressure.
They don't really make it easy for themselves, do they? Yeah, that was David Brady and Nathan Murphy. But it's time for the pressure rankings this week, the Gillette pressure rankings. Patented. Owen, we've taken an All-Ireland final theme to this one.
Yeah, let's talk about how other teams can actually step up to the plate and what they can be doing to actually try and give us a different All-Ireland winner in the next few years. As you say yourself, there's going to be a lot spoken about what could be done to stop Dublin, but what can other counties be doing themselves? There's probably a big responsibility on that, and as Kieran Donaghy was just saying a moment ago, do we take it a little bit too easy on some of the younger players? Maybe not just the younger players, all sorts of players.
On the counties?
In inter-county setups.
We take it too easy on the counties. It's their job to stop this.
We probably do. Here are 5 counties that should be under a little bit of pressure to try and arrest what's happening at the moment over the next few years. Straight in at number 5 is Cork.
Can we just, before we get there, can we just have a list of the other counties who should be on this list but aren't on it, quickly?
Well, the list is Cork in 5th, Tyrone in 4th, Donegal in 3rd, Kerry in 2nd, Mayo in 1st. So
who's missing?
There's no Leinster county.
Every single county in Leinster.
Well, let's start there then. Talk to me about the level of pressure or lack thereof that you would feel as a Kildare GAA supporter.
It feels like decades of ineptitude at an administrative level are paying dividends now. That there have been great players who have been isolated pockets down to personal excellence as opposed to a structure which belches forward constant talent. Even though we've actually had really competitive underage teams for about the last 5, 7, 8 years, that there is a little kink in the matrix that is preventing a team emerging. And you would have to say that that's down to the county board, and you would have to say that the Newbridge or Nowhere thing was actually down to the county board, rescued by the players and the management at that time, turning this negative, how crappy the stadium is, into a positive, right? That's the best thing that Kildare have done, is turn their negative into a one-off positive that got a one-time performance from them. But where's the consistency of performance? Where's the expectation? Since McGeeney is gone, there's been no expectation that the senior team were going to be able to produce a team that rivaled the Dubs. They were in it. They were right there against Dublin, going toe to toe for Leinster titles. Obviously, Dublin have vastly improved, but Kildare have gone way backwards. And it's the same for Meath. There's no excuse for Kildare and Meath. There's a massive population centre in Louth, but it's essentially a soccer county, really. It's got 2 League of Ireland teams. Like, Wicklow gets a free pass, but a massive population centre in North Wicklow, no one ever even talks about them being any good at football. Like, they've got that plucky underdog thing where they go on a run and win 3 crappy qualifiers against Division 3 and Division 4 teams. Like, I mean, what the hell? Anyway.
Well, that's why we're having that conversation. They're not even on this list of teams. And these are the list of teams that if they got hockeyed by Dublin, you would say you would expect better from them. And maybe with counties like Kildare and Meath, if they get hockeyed by Dublin, there is a,
shrug of the shoulders.
A shrug of the shoulders. I will say, just I agree with you on Kildare and Meath. You're a little bit harsh on Wicklow. I wouldn't be surprised to see Wicklow step forward a little bit over these next few years. By all accounts, their academy there, the Garden Academy it's called, is doing really good stuff. Obviously had a good league campaign this year. They're starting from a low base, don't get me wrong. Kildare and Meath are starting from a much higher base. I wouldn't be surprised to see them maybe take a step up. But all 3 of them, definitely, all the surrounding areas.
Just, if Kildare and Meath aren't tearing themselves apart internally, if there aren't massive rows at county conventions and within clubs about what the future of football in those counties looks like, they're failing. They're failing their players, they're failing their underage structures, they're failing themselves and they're failing their history. There has to be a massive self-examination in those counties because there has been an injection of money through the East Leinster grant scheme where they're trying to redress some of the balance. Now, funding is obviously an issue, but what are they doing themselves? Where is their organisation? Where's the massive increase in profile and sponsorship and what are they doing? How did Kildare GAA popularise or capitalise on the popularity of Paul Mescal? What did they do? Did they do anything? Did they sit there and watch? There's one of our former players becoming globally famous, and go, well, that's interesting. Yeah, he's wearing our shorts as well. Jeez, that's a good thing, isn't it? Did they make any money off the back of that? I mean, their accounts will be interesting.
The time when that conversation should have been happening, though, was 2011. Once Kildare and Meath saw Dublin win 1, that should have been the moment when the alarm bells were ringing and they were like, we can't be letting this happen. Every neighbour should be absolutely furious when their neighbour wins just 1 All-Ireland. They can't be, surely it can't take 6 in a row. It can't take, 8 All-Irelands later for them to say, God, we should really do something about this. They should already have hated Dublin so much to the point where 1 All-Ireland was going to be bad enough. The noisy neighbours winning 1, just 2011, that's all it would have taken for them to completely transform how they're thinking about things. If they're only getting around to it now, 9 years on from that 2011 win, it's a bit late.
And it's much easier to bitch and whine about the population and, the game is rigged so we can never win, let's not bother.
Well, if that's all you're doing, for sure. There are questions to be asked on both sides. No doubt about it, that plays a factor as well. But if you're just going to put the feet up and say, well, that is the beginning and the end of why we are getting beaten by Dublin every time, then obviously you're going to get nowhere. And for these 5 counties here in our pressure rankings, I'd like to think that none of them genuinely think that way. I'd like to think in at number 5, Cork actually don't have a leg to stand on if they start thinking that way anyway, because of the population base that they have, because before 2011, who was the last All-Ireland winner? It was Cork in 2010. They have a history of recent success. They have a history of really good players. And they had a little bit of success this year. They're out of the doldrums in Division 3. They're on the way back up. They've had their lowest ebb. They've put together a commercial plan. Granted that they're kind of got the millstone around their neck of massive stadium debt at the moment, but they've put together a plan to address that, to address how they actually get the most out of their population base. And Cork, whenever they come up against Dublin, again, shouldn't be thinking, look at what Dublin have, look at all the advantages they have. Cork probably don't have a leg to stand on in that regard. So I think there's pressure on them, huge pressure on Cork over the next few years to actually do something for themselves football-wise. Maybe start by actually winning the Munster title, start beating Kerry regularly again, or at least make that more of a rivalry after the one-off situation of this year, and actually try and put yourselves back into the picture of winning an All-Ireland, because they have all the natural ability there and all the advantages that Dublin have if you look at Cork compared to most other counties. So they're in at number 5 in the pressure rankings. The rest of these now are teams that have come close-ish. At number 4 is Tyrone. I think they're a little bit lower down the pecking order here because it's not Mickey Hart around. I think if Mickey Hart was still manager, they could be in the top 2 here, where it really is time for them to take a step forward. At least there has been some sort of noticeable action off the pitch, where they have changed the management team. Not that Mickey Hart was a bad manager, he's one of the greatest managers of all time, but they probably needed something new. They've got Conor McKenna back, they will have Colin McShane back, and that is probably two of the reasons why they are on this top 5 list. Where people, I think you've actually said this yourself, people think that Tyrone is the best forward line in the country next year.
There's a possibility of it.
There's a possibility of it. Like, I think it's a little bit OTT.
Conor Callahan is, he wins all the arguments at the moment.
Let's wait and see who actually has the best forward line. Like, would they even be, they have a better forward line than any of those top 3 counties and Dublin? Like, maybe not. So there's pressure on them to get back to 2018 first of all, and then actually get over the line and actually put up a bit of a better fight than they did in that 2018 final. At number 3 is Donegal. We've spoken about them earlier in the show. They haven't been back to a semi-final in a long, long time. They're a team that should be trying to get to All-Ireland finals. They're a team that we put a lot of hope in this year, that they might actually give Dublin a run for their money. People who know what they're talking about were saying the way this Donegal team are set up, the talent that they have and the bench that they have, their athleticism, that should be able to give Dublin a good run. And they don't even get that opportunity. And that has been the story of Donegal for the last few years. The same last year when they looked really good. An excellent coaching ticket. They've got one of the best coaches in Stephen Rochford, working under Declan Bonner at the moment, and they haven't even been able to get a slice of the pie dining at the last 4. So that is probably the pressure on them, that they need to get back there next season before they even dream about playing the Dubs. Number 2 then is Kerry. Like, we've spoken about them at length. Like, they will think that they have the best chance of
Kerry should be number 1 here. I know traditionally we have an argument about this.
I'll make the case for Mayo in a moment as to why they're number 1. But the thing, like, if they're watching that game on Saturday and thinking that they can just come back to the table next year the way that they approached it this year and think that they can actually run Dublin close again like they did last year, then they're absolutely delusional, because things need to change. And whatever questions they're asking of themselves, can they actually say to themselves that we will be able to go 80 minutes against Dublin and do what Dublin do, which is hold strong, which is stay mentally strong, and absolutely see out a game if it's in the melting pot. And something probably needs to change for that to actually happen. And this is the really difficult situation that everybody's in when they come up against Dublin, is it seems like you're getting over a bridge. Even just contending, even just being alive after 50 minutes seems like an achievement in itself. So it's a whole other mountain to climb when you go into those last 20, 30 minutes to try and actually beat them in that period of the game as well. And that's a challenge for them. And it's why Mayo are number 1 on the pressure rankings as well. Like, there are good young talents in that Mayo team, but this is, by and large, the backbone of this team is made up of players who've been around for a long, long time. And there will be questions about how long more do they go on for, when is the time that they actually call it a day, or when is the time they're going to win an All-Ireland, because that's it. It's either you win the All-Ireland or you retire. That they're the two decisions to be made over the next few years. And on the evidence of Saturday, mainly because of how good Dublin were, in my opinion, it looks as if Mayo might not get over that line. That for me is a serious amount of pressure, because that is the expectation, despite the fact that it's been 70 years, that is the expectation as a Mayo footballer. You go and win an All-Ireland.
Yeah, all right, that's this week's pressure rankings.
OTB AM's pressure rankings with Gillette.
One last chance for you to win our prize on OTB AM this morning. It's a one-for-all gift card from your local post office. It's the perfect last-minute gifting option for family, friends and colleagues this Christmas. They'll be available for purchase from post offices nationwide up until closing time, which is 1 o'clock on Christmas Eve. Right now, we're giving you the chance to win a €100 one-for-all gift card. All you have to do is correctly guess our mystery voice, who is unimpressed by the gossip columns. Who's this?
If something will happen, then it will happen. There are so many rumours in the newspapers, and it's really funny.
Text his name, your name, send that message to 0879 180 180. One last chance.
If something will happen, then it will happen. There are so many rumours in the newspapers, and it's really funny.
Right, at 8:54, let's join Alan Quinlan. Alan, how are you?
Morning, lads. How are you?
The Munster match against Claremont, I'd say a lot of people were probably watching the football and missed exactly what happened, but it as a stunning performance from Munster, who were getting hammered and then produced some of their best rugby, it seems, in the last decade. What happened?
I think they obviously fixed things at half-time and just kept plugging away. It didn't give up. I think that was probably the key to it. They could have folded. You know, I played down at Claremont, and I put a tweet out on Saturday evening that it was one of the best performances, if not the best performance by any team ever in Europe. And that wasn't being disrespectful to what Leinster have done there. You know, Connacht's win against Toulouse. even some of the wins by the English teams in France, based on I'm putting it in context that nobody gave them a chance, including myself. And I think, when you go 28-9 down after 24 or 5 minutes, you think it's going to be a massive score. So there's obviously a belief in the team that maybe wasn't as strong before, and a determination that got them back into the game. So they tidied up a lot of the mistakes they made, Ger. I think right from the kickoff, they knocked the ball on. Clermont scored a try. The last thing you want to do when you play against a team in France is give them that feel-good factor right at the start of the game. And, having played Clermont twice there, that stadium is, okay, there's no crowds there, and that has helped a little bit. And it does help when you don't have that ferocious crowd back in the home team. But they just made a lot of mistakes early on, and Clermont were brilliant then if you give them that time and space and make the errors. But Munster just tidied up their game, and I think the Mike Haley try gave them a huge boost, not just scoring a try, but the way they scored it. I thought the execution was brilliant. And, there's a lot of talk about their attack in the last 12 months, 2 years. And I think finally we saw, a strike move, a play that exposed Clermont. The execution was absolutely brilliant, and that just gave them a belief that, if they hold on to the ball and if they put pressure on Clermont, they'll either get a penalty or they'll get a line break, and that got them back into the game. And I know myself from being out in a game like that where you fall well behind. It is a case of, you have to react and you have to throw caution to the wind, but you've got to be accurate as well, because you start firing the ball around and being expansive and taking chances for the sake of it, and you're sloppy with that, you can end up giving away scores, and the opposition can put you away. But the resilience of the team was phenomenal, and let's not fool ourselves. This is a team full of there's inexperience, if you like. Shane Daly's starting his first game in the wing in Europe. He came off the bench last year, but that's his first start on the wing. Josh Wycherley, given the start he had against Slimani and the pressure you'd have going down and scrummaging against a team like Clermont in the south of France, I thought he was phenomenal. Craig Casey, Gavin Coombs, even Vinny Wycherley, coming off the bench. They had an impact off the bench, something that maybe they've lacked before. And as I said, just a real belief. So it was an incredible performance.
It's the bit where Stephen Larkham's imprint and Johan van Graan's imprint finally coalesce, and you can see exactly what the potential for this team is. And now, because you've gone to France and come back against a team like Clermont from a massive losing position, Munster fans can begin to dream.
Yeah, you just have to be realistic as well, Ger. The Pro 14, look, they're on top of their pool. They've had it easy there, and I think with the signing of Dialinde and Snyman this year, there was a lot of hope, I suppose. And Snyman is obviously out injured for the season, but Dialinde was just sensational. Just the lines are running, the carries, the intelligence to take on ball and not run out over people. He has that subtle touch to get his hands through and just step people a little bit and get quick balls. So, yeah, of course there's a bit of belief there, and that can be a watershed moment for them. They can now look back at the has-beens like me or the old Munster players who've probably had the bragging rights. Not that we want them. I want Munster to do well, and I want them to win the European Cup. But, we've always spoke about creating their own legacy. Well, they can, no matter what happens, they can always say, well, we won in Clermont. Ye didn't. The Munster team I was on didn't win in Clermont. So it is a big moment for them, but they've got to capitalise on that now and kick on. And there's a lot of positive things happening there, I think. And the most positive thing, Jerry, is we now see some young players coming through. We see enthusiasm, we see quality, we see energy. You're still going to get mistakes. By no means are they the finished article. And, the biggest challenge for them now is Clermont coming to Thomond Park, because I can guarantee you that Clermont side can go anywhere. I did them last week against Bristol. They were sensational. They blew Bristol away. They scored 54 points or something. So Munster have just got to be careful now that they keep their feet on the ground. But I thought it was just more than passion, as I said. Their accuracy was really good. So, of course, people can have a bit of hope, but it's just making sure now it's in their own hands in the group. They've 2 wins, 2 to go. They're Clermont at home and Quinn's away. So they've just got to make sure that they don't slip up, and maybe hope then that if they get into quarterfinals that they have Sneeman back in action and maybe Joey Carberry, which would give them a huge boost.
How impressive is it for someone to be in a position like Josh Wycherley was in, getting killed, it seemed at the start, by Slimani in the scrum, to actually turn that around and turn it back on Slimani as the game raged on? That ability to actually turn it around in that department of the game seems almost like the most impressive facet.
Yeah, it was. Slimani is a brilliant scrummager and very powerful, and getting lifted up in the scrum like he did early on in the game could have had a devastating effect on him mentally. I know it was a very dangerous situation that you're not allowed to do that, lift props up in the air like that. It was illegal, but it just showed what can happen if you're switched off a little bit. I'm sure he was nervous, but it shows on that he's hard. He's a tough young fella to be able to cope with that. We played Perpignan in 1998 down in the south of France, and Declan Kidney, after 20 minutes, our scrum was struggling. And Declan Kidney put John Hayes on in the first half of the game, and he took him off after 20 minutes and apologised to him for putting him on. So John Hayes went on and won 104 caps for Ireland and 2 British and Irish Lions tours. This is there's some similarities, with getting that kind of a welcome to the front row as a young player and an inexperienced player. And I just thought his overall play, the way he sorted out the scrum, his play around the field, and I think there's potential there for him to go on and be a top class international. Obviously, he's going to get bigger, stronger, and better. But his defence around the field and his rucking and his tackling is phenomenal. I think he's a brilliant young player who has a big future ahead of himself if he looks after himself. But that'll do the mentality of those players like that. That'll do them the world of good. What happened on Saturday?
It's a real kind of turnaround in how we feel about Irish rugby since the way the national team has been performing. What's going on? What's the truth?
I just think that obviously in sports, you can have a dip in form and things can go against you, and losing becomes a habit as well as winning. And I think Ireland have obviously had their struggles for 15, 16 months, and a lot of the players themselves. If you look at someone like Peter O'Mahony, I think his performances in the last few weeks and performances for Ireland have been brilliant in November. And Peter, you go back to New Zealand, the game won in Dublin in 2018. The performance he had there, we probably hadn't seen a top-class performance where you're talking about Peter O'Mahony being man of the match. What's different in his game is the passing, the touches, being able to offload the ball and stuff like that. So he's added a little bit, and at any age you can do that. So I think it's sometimes your back can be completely to the wall and you've got to come out fighting, and he's come out fighting. So there is a feel-good factor. Leinster's performance in Montpellier last week, it wasn't their best performance against Northampton on Saturday. They had a lot of disruption, and Northampton didn't throw in the towel, if you like, but Ulster were unlucky in Gloucester. It's a game they should have won, and Connacht, probably the better side, won yesterday against Bristol, but they'll look back with a bit of regret. But both Ulster and Connacht now maybe have a chance of getting into the Challenge Cup. But I think there is a little bit of a more positive feel about the Irish internationals, the way they're playing, and hopefully they can carry that on into the Six Nations going forward. But certainly Munster's result, I think Irish rugby, in a sense, and Andy Farrell probably needs more Munster guys to come through, needs more Ulster and Connacht guys as well. And the more of those teams that are playing better and having success in Europe. If you're doing well in Europe, you're knocking on the international door, you're putting your hand up big wins like this grab the attention of the Irish selectors, and that's what happened at the weekend, particularly for Munster.
In the Leinster game, people were complaining about the Tom Woods, Josh van der Fleer incident. What did you make of it?
Well, at the time, I'm still a little bit divided. And again, you know, I've been someone who's obviously been very proactive. I've been on with G many times talking about high shots and other people talking, saying, you know, there shouldn't be red cards, there shouldn't be penalties. You know, my belief is that, you know, we need to take more control of this and have more consistency, and we need people outside the game to talk about it and to agree that they're red cards and that the game has not gone soft given everything that's gone on. But I was probably one of them on Saturday on Virgin Media where I just find the Tom Wood clean out on Josh van der Fleer, by the letter of the law, Ger, it was shoulder to the neck and head area, and letter of the law, that's a red card. But I just found it hard to say that it was a red card. Now, Owen Redden was with me, and Owen was thinking, look, it's a red card. I think there was a lot of mitigating factors. The fact that Tom Wood didn't charge into the breakdown. Josh van der Fleer's head was sticking up a little bit, and he did try to wrap his arm. So the TMO look at it and the referee, and they decide it's not even a penalty. I think it was more than a penalty. I think it was dangerous, and Josh van der Fleer could have got injured. We can't get away from that fact. But it's a really complex one at the breakdown, and you know, letter of the law, it's a red card. But I still find it a very, very difficult one inside of me to go. And when I do commentaries and I see other matches, I kind of go, that's a red card. Even though the player, you may argue that the player, there wasn't intent there. But I think it's much easier in a tackle situation to lower the tackle and take out the force. So the only thing that Tom Wood could have done better was, I suppose, try and get lower. But when you're at ruck height, he's 6'4". He probably, can he get any lower? Maybe he can, but he didn't put force in there. But I still think, you know, it's most probably a red card, and it was something that wasn't dealt with. And would it have been harsh on him? Possibly, but maybe we need to go here, Ger, and maybe we need to make sure all these are red cards at the breakdown. The breakdown is much harder because, you know, you've shoulders and heads very close together in a lot of these cleanouts. And I kind of was leaning towards it not being a red card. And I think it was clumsy more than anything from Tom Wood, but there wasn't any force in it. So some people disagreed with me, and people were onto me on social media saying I was wrong to say what I did, but I just couldn't find it. I just didn't have that feeling that this is a clear red card, where many of the ones I've spoken about before, where other people say they're not red cards, particularly the Australia-New Zealand game a couple of weeks ago. I just found it hard to get that feeling that that's a red.
All right. I guess that's
so. Again, it's going to rumble on this discussion, and maybe it should have been a red.
But we have to keep having them as well. Alan, great stuff. Thanks a million. Happy Christmas to you.
Cheers, lads. Same to you guys. Thanks.
9:08 this morning here on OTB AM, live in association with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Good morning. Start with Gillette. 0879 180 180 is the number if you want to get in touch with us. I want to tell you about what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio. OTB Gold, Michael Owen's Life After Football, the History of Sports series with Paul Rouse from 3 o'clock. Our Culture Hall of Fame with Dermot Kennedy, what a year he's had. Brian O'Driscoll meets Issa Nasewa on OTB Gold at 6, and the show is live from 7 tonight. We're going to be back after this with the reaction to Dublin's 4 in a row in the women's football, and we're heading to Temple Street with Dessie Farrell and Philly McMahon next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio. Off the ball.
I scored a goal in some kind of celebrity thing that I managed to get invited to, but Bez from the Happy Mondays was a goal. Oh Jesus, he didn't put up much resistance, but he had the decency. He's a good goal, Tom. That was one of the highlights of my life. Like, he was watching the match, his head had been in goal. It's like, oh, that was a good goal, Tom.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1.
This is OTB Sports Radio. Live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
I pledge.
I pledge.
My 20 by 20 pledge.
I pledge to. I'm pledging showing my stripes in my pledge.
To pledge. Pledge with him.
On my stripes this year.
I pledge for 2020.
Richie Sadler here, and I pledged.
$82,000 people in the crowd.
Everyone needs to get out there and show those stripes.
20 by 20, St. Lucia, Nua.
I love running, like I'm very good at.
I'm black belt. I got a walking in league today.
Find out how you can show your stripes for women in sport.
I believe in the 20 by 20.
Since 20 by 20 launched in 2018, I have heard so many incredible stories of the cultural change that has been happening in Ireland for women in sport.
I think young girls growing up today can actually dream about becoming pro one day.
Lead for the people and the girls who are following behind me.
The next onus now is on the male population.
This Christmas, get all the non-stop Premier League action with a Now TV, Sky Sports or Sports Extra pack. Watch over 40 games this December with the biggest names in the league.
Gets it from Fernandes.
Stream every game or only pay for the ones you want. Your sport on your terms with Now TV. 18 plus ROI only. Month passes sold separately and auto-renew. Minimum speed 2.5 megabits per second. Terms apply.
Bet smart this season with stat betting on the Boyle Sports app. Bet on shots, shots on target, tackles, passes, assists and more, all powered by Opta. Plus, put your feet up and cheer your bets home with free live streaming on every UK and Irish horse race. Why not check out the hottest action on the biggest sporting events right now on the Boyle Sports app. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Need help? Contact gamblingcare.ie. 18 plus.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Aishling, a double header here in Croke Park today. It was a bit strange. We're 5 days out from Christmas, no crowds, all a bit weird.
Yeah, very weird. I was coming up in the car this morning. I actually just said to my mother going out the door, I don't think I'm going to actually feel like it's real until I actually get to the stadium. Knowing her, she's a big, massive football fan. She was very jealous of me going out the door this morning, but it's an absolute privilege to be here, and I suppose to see the games today as well. It's a great honour to be here, and luckily for Meath as well. They're up now to senior, and for Dublin, sure, who's going to stop them?
I know, yeah, we'll talk about Meath first. So Meath and Westmeath, we've seen Westmeath come down from senior, and they were hoping on this first attempt they'd go back up. But Meath finally got over the line, and you know all about that, having played against them in the All-Ireland final last year.
I have great respect for them as well. I suppose always back in tip, we've had a few battles down through the years, so it's great to see them get up to senior this year. I suppose if they're going to look at another loss, mentally challenging for next year, coming into this again, even facing the championship next year. So I'm delighted that they got over the line. Disappointed for Westmeath as well. They're a great side, but I'm sure they'll come back with their full force next year.
And you'll see them up competing in senior next year. It's great for them. And obviously the way Leinster is in the ladies senior, they'll be straight through to a Leinster final with Dublin. How do you think they'll get on there?
Well, the first thing I thought of when they won, I was like, oh God, here we go back now to me Tipperary rivalry. But next year, facing Dublin, you never know. I suppose when you come off from intermediate, they have a lot of young players as well. They're not going to mind who they're playing against. So you never know. It's all on the day. We've seen many different things happening this year. I suppose Armagh nearly beating Dublin, Donegal nearly beating Dublin as well, and a freak goal goes in. So you just don't know on the day. But I'd give them every chance as well to put up to Dublin.
And then we'll move on to the senior final here today. The first half, it was low scoring. It ended up 1-5 to 1-10 in the end. Dublin just got the edge. What did you make of the game?
Looking at the first half, it was probably the first time ever that I saw Dublin's body language quite poor. Up front with Cork, I suppose if they'd capitalised a bit more on some chance that they got. For Dublin, on the other hand, they missed 2 or 3 goal chances in the first half, but as I said at half time, McMahon obviously had a few words. They came out and they showed that the Dublin team, like they were the last 3 or 4 years, they're ferocious, their whole body language changed, their attitude and everything. So from the off, it looked like Cork were playing too far back the field. At one stage, I looked, Kieran Sullivan was on the 45-yard line and there was no forwarding behind her. And I suppose playing against a team like that, you need to be playing on the front foot and be willing to take chances. So I think from the off in the second half, you could see that Dublin did have hold of the game. And I suppose Cork were just trying to crawl, and the more went on, then the body language with Cork turned. The table just completely turned from first half to second half.
What was that? Like, I didn't even recognise Dublin in the first half. You know, they normally play with a lot of confidence, and it was cagey.
It was very cagey, and I suppose if you look at the Armagh game before that, I suppose I had tipped Cork to win it today, because going by that and the way their attitude and body language and the way Armagh had opened them up in the semi-final, that's what I was going off. But I don't know, that happens. Favourites coming into a match, going for 4 in a row. It's obvious, we're all human. That's going to be in your subconscious mind, even though you're going to try to say it isn't. So I think coming into this game, Dublin probably were a bit nervy in the first half, and they settled themselves in the second half, and the table just completely flipped over.
And there's huge positives for Cork as well. We see they're such a young team. They're going through a bit of a transition from the years of, I'd say, since 2016, when they lost a lot of their Raina Buckleys, Breed Corkery, those big names. But they've so many young girls coming up.
Yeah, and you have to look at it as well. Some of them Dublin girls went through severe heartache. I actually remember, I was only talking to someone today, and I remember sitting over in the far corner here behind me looking at their match when they were up by about 5 or 6 points and Cork came back to win it. So I suppose there's a massive rivalry there between the two teams. Dublin have had the upper hand on them the last few years, but the margin is getting closer. We've seen the Ladies' Championship this year. Teams are getting closer to each other, and that's what you want. You want games to be like that, and for teams to step up to the mark. But for Cork, look, there is a lot of positive stakes. They are a young team, as they said, and I'm sure they're going to come back even stronger and better.
Something that Mick Bowen said after the game there was that they have 5 All-Irelands. It just happens that 4 are now in a row. So it's not as if that they have been taken over for a long time. It's just in these last recent years.
Yeah, and I suppose, look, it's nearly like their counterparts. We saw the men here yesterday and doing their few in a row as well. But I think they've set the bar for the rest of the counties in terms of ladies football as well. People involved with them, they brought a different kind of attitude towards football. Their physicality, the way they played the game, they played on the front foot. It's all running football. Defend from deep and just attack, and I suppose other teams are trying to mirror that now. So it's, I don't know, it's looking like they've young girls coming up there. Jennifer Dunn, I played with her myself, and last year I was wondering how she wasn't even starting on that team, and you could see her there today. Probably someone who goes unknown with all the big guns out there, but Jennifer Dunn, for me, and those younger girls coming up are going to make a severe hell of a difference, and I don't know, it's looking like a tough one for the next few years with Dublin.
And we seen Carla Rowe, she really just stepped up there in the second half. She got 1-3 to her name, and that all-important penalty that really turned the game.
Yeah, for me, I think Carla Rowe is my player of the match, to be honest. She's someone who always gives 100% in every game, probably goes a bit under the radar as well. But you can see the way she stood up to them, freezing that penalty in particular at crucial times, and it was changing in the game as well. But yeah, no, she's a brilliant player. She's very tenacious. It's enjoyable to watch her play. She just runs up and down the field continuously. But yeah, no, when you look at players like that, and you might say, are a few of them going to retire next year? And then you look at the likes of Carla Rowe and Jennifer Dunn, you're like, God, there's a lot more coming up on the conveyor belt.
Aishling Moloney there at Croke Park, giving us some views after the 4 in a row from the Dublin ladies team, and we'll come back to that a little bit later on. But on the Monday after the All-Ireland finals, hurling and football, it is traditional for the winning teams to bring the cup to the children's hospitals in Crumlin and Temple Street, and the annual visit to the hospitals from the winners is a huge chance to raise some awareness around the brilliant work that happens at the children's hospitals in Ireland. But they're also in need of help. If you head to templestreet.ie, you'll be able to see how you can donate and help at the Children's Health Foundation at Temple Street. Today, we're delighted to be dropping in virtually on Temple Street to help some of the patients there talk to their heroes. We're going to hear from the Director of Nursing at Temple Street in a moment as well. But first, I'm delighted to say we're joined by Philly McMahon and Dessie Farrell. Gents, you're both very welcome. Philly, if I can start with you, 8 All-Ireland medals is a pretty serious haul. Has it dawned on you that that's like an all-time great achievement?
I suppose not really. Like I think over the next couple of months maybe, but at the minute, it's just nice to win an All-Ireland, especially with the year that's in it. You know, it'd be disastrous not winning it with all the work that you would have put in the summer on your own down football pitches. But yeah, it's nice to top it off, and you know, it's unfortunate we couldn't get into the hospitals this year, but hopefully we brought some energy to those who support the Dubs over the years and gave them a little bit of a positivity over Christmas as well.
Dessie, I might ask you then to put some context on it. You know, you would have grown up watching that great Kerry team, and several of your lads yesterday equalled the record of the great Paulie O'Shea and Spillane and Mikey Sheahan and all those guys, Ger Power with their 8 medals. It's a phenomenal achievement for them as individuals, not before we even talk about the collective.
100%. It is. It's an amazing achievement, and I'm bowled over, to be honest, Ger, with their dedication and commitment and how they can keep going to the well year after year and driving on. And obviously there was a new management team in place this year, and we were sort of pushing hard and trying to do things and in a certain way or whatever, and the response was amazing. So huge credit to the players. They're a special group for sure.
A really tricky job, I guess, from your perspective, where you come into a situation where that culture is obviously working incredibly well. So you want to make sure that you don't tamper with the great stuff that was there, but at the same time, to keep evolving, you need to do whatever it is that you see is the next stage of it. So how did you balance that desire to change some stuff up, but also to keep the best parts?
Yeah, I think it was obviously Jim and his management team had done a brilliant job previously. Pat Gilroy before him, so there was a rich legacy, so to speak, and they had a lot of really good stuff in place, of course, and then the players themselves, as I keep mentioning, were unbelievable. But I think we set our stall out at the start of the year to try to continue to evolve, and if this team was to stagnate, that could be trouble for us, you know. So we spoke about that at our very first meeting, that need to continue to evolve, to that continuous improvement, that evolution was really important to us, and we tried to go after that this year. And again, amazing credit to players in their application and diligence around that type of thing. It was phenomenal.
In what way did you manage to find that evolution then, Dessie? You said that was the objective at the start of the year. How did that manifest itself, that evolution?
Well, it's, you know, there's small parts around the game itself, of course. Then there was the injection of new players. I think 10 new players come into the panel, and getting that dynamic and chemistry right with fellas who were there and very experienced, obviously, and getting the bond and all that was important. And then just, I think the culture was something that we tried to continue to evolve as well, and make sure that the culture around us, how we do things, how we exist with each other, was going to be always important in terms of that evolution as well.
Philly, Dessie mentioned there that the players were pushed and they responded well to being pushed throughout the year. From a player's perspective, how hard were you pushed? How close to the brink were a lot of players during the year? And those dark moments, how much did that inspire you when you eventually got closer and closer to the All-Ireland?
Yeah, like, I mean, I suppose for me, where I am in my career, when I sat down and looked at the year, I always had an ambition and an objective to do what I could to help this new management team come in, because it wasn't easy, I suppose, for them, as Dessie would say, you know, with COVID not being able to get us together as a group. So I think a lot of players, and myself included, would have felt something new this year, in that when you were kind of off training on your own and you were training during the daytime, and you weren't in the same process that you had been in for years, where you were getting up in the morning time and going to work, but everything that's on your mind is about football. How you hydrate yourself, what your nutrition is, how much active you are during the day and work, all these things for that build up till 7 o'clock to train. That wasn't there. So a lot of players, I'd say, all around the country, I suppose, got an opportunity to realise all the other aspects of their lives, how important they were. So that was probably difficult for the management, I'd say, to keep us motivated and keep us engaged. And I think the management team done a brilliant job on that. So with all those distractions and all the other distractions that we normally have throughout the year, it was just great that we got the time together when a lot of other sports and a lot of different levels of sports couldn't. So it was important for us to realise what we represented, and the management made us never forget that we had the opportunity to do things that not an awful lot of people could do, and we tried to grasp that every time we got a chance to get together.
Yeah, Dessie, will you talk to us about April and May and like that bit where all of a sudden the whole world is re-establishing what we hold dear, what our values are, what's actually important, what am I going to spend time on, and obviously the day-to-day life and the business of staying safe was far more important than anything else for people. At some point, you need to make football part of what's going to happen again, but in the right way. That must have been tricky enough.
I look at it. I think it was about perspective for us, and and the players have spoken eloquently about this afterwards. That it's very, very difficult year for many people. A lot of people have suffered hardship, a lot of loss, a lot of suffering has gone on, sickness, illness, loved ones lost, that type of thing, and it was very different from that perspective, So we were always mindful that there was this much, much bigger picture out there, I think. But at the same time, we needed to do what we needed to do. And I think that gave us a sense of purpose and a reason to exist in those challenging times. And we were very grateful for that. And I think it was getting that balance right in terms of perspective and what was going on for us. And the lads did that brilliantly, So the early months were tough for sure, but people kept driving on and players kept doing what they were doing on their own, difficult and all as that was, as Vinny mentions, So it was about the balance for sure, and thankfully we were able to keep the show on the road at that time and get ourselves to a place where we could compete on the final day.
What was the message at half-time, Dessie, when you are going to be down a man for the first 8-9 minutes of the second half? What actually happens in the changing room at that point?
Not a lot, to be honest. We sort of throw it over to the players, and they're very experienced. And from a management perspective, obviously we were dealing with the situation of black card and how we'd set ourselves up for that. But again, these players have been through a lot, and while there was new players obviously in the midst, the older experienced lads really stood up, the likes of Philly, James McCarthy, Fento, Johnny Cooper. They've been through a lot, have seen a lot, and it was those lads that steadied the ship and made sure that we came out in that second half and were set up in the right way and had the right attitude and the right approach. And I think the big thing was that we weren't going to take a step back. It was obviously that was going to be a test for us that next 10 minutes, and it was important for us to manage our way through that and come out the right side of the battle we could at all. And I think the lads did that brilliantly and set us up for victory in the end, perhaps.
How was half-time for you, Philly? Obviously, there was a bit of needle going down the tunnel at the break.
Yeah. It was a nice bit of energy at half-time for us. So obviously, I was a part of the group that were I suppose, potentially going to be coming off the bench, and it was important for us to get in and give some information to the other lads that we might have seen in the stands, and then just get our heads around that this could be a tight game, that it might even go into extra time. So just to keep focused and do a little warm up in the area, and then give that feedback to the lads and give them every chance going out for the second half.
Is it just a bit of trash talk with the Mayo lads when you're running down the tunnel? Obviously, there's a nice rivalry and a familiarity built up over the last decade.
Yeah. As I mentioned on RTE, they asked Murch to do the elf on the shelf, and he wouldn't do it, so they got pissed off, you know. But no, yeah. Look, it's just it's the way it goes. A bit of banter in the tunnel, and we're all men. We push and shove, and we get on with it, and it's just another little element of the game. It's nothing that's going to take a huge amount away from what happened on the pitch, because two teams went out and tried to bring out the best in each other, and as Mayo always do, and that's just the way the game is.
How has your role in the squad developed over the last few years, Philly? Like Dessie mentioned there, that it's a very player-led environment at half-time, for example. Obviously, I presume for the last 5 or 6 years at least, you've taken up that role of being more and more of a leader. Did that go to a whole new level again this year for you personally?
I think so. I think it's been different in that, you know, the players that are, I suppose, in the starting positions, you got to make sure that your ego does not take over, or you don't have, you know, you don't turn into this negative person because you're not getting a huge amount of game time. But you need to support the lads as much as you can, because there's other lads that probably weren't in the squad that done as just an important job for the guys that started than I did, you know. So you have to take that gratitude piece that you're on the bench, you're in the squad. There was lads in the stands behind us that didn't get a chance, that have been driving everybody on for the whole year. The likes of, especially the older lads, Paddy Andrews, Cian O'Sullivan and Rory O'Carroll, they were three lads that were very crucial to the whole build-up of the game. And yeah, I think we've been given opportunities to play games when you weren't playing as well. The management done that brilliantly this year, but we weren't playing much. We made sure we played football and training a lot, and that's where you just keep showing your attitude and showing your worth to the management team and to the squad, and show the love that you have for the whole squad and the years and the culture and everything that we've built. That you don't take energy away, that you add to it. So it's been a really informative year for me. It's like there's loads of learnings every time you get a chance to get amongst the group, and this year was a special one for me in terms of learning.
Is that difficult at any point, Philly, the acceptance that your role has changed in terms of the minutes that you're actually going to get?
Yeah, it is. You'd be lying to say it wouldn't. It's not difficult because you train to play matches. But as Dessie mentioned, you have to realise that you're a part of something bigger than yourself. And again, when you reflect on it, and you know, you get the opportunity to help that team get over the line, and what that brings to your wider community, that always outweighs any kind of selfishness or ego that you might develop from not playing.
We're just going to make contact with Temple Street. There's just a little bit of an issue with the line at the moment, but I did want to ask you about this process of visiting the hospitals. Dessie, this is obviously would have been your first year doing it, but I'll never forget Jack McCaffrey last year doing an interview where he talked about you know, people saying visits to the hospitals put sport in context, but actually it's the opposite to that. When you see what sport can bring to people and you see the importance of it, and that line has really resonated over this part of the last 4 or 5 months when sport came back, and under very strict protocols, we've managed to have an All-Ireland final in hurling and football, and we see the underage games going back now, while the rest of the world is undergoing you know, real proper turmoil on a multitude of different levels. Sometimes we do actually forget that an outlet is a very important psychological release valve for all of us.
Yeah, for sure, Ger. It's been a very, very, very strange year, and you know, obviously the initial part of the lockdown was really tough, because if you're a sports fanatic like most of us are, not having anything to watch or to engage with was really tough. And it was brilliant to be able to slowly but surely put the games back on and, you know, have a plan for the year and see what was coming at you from our perspective. So it wasn't easy, and we were very conscious that, you know, as I mentioned at the start, you know, there was a lot of things going on for a lot of people, and maybe in some small way, sport and Dublin football was important to people, and give some succour and some comfort in some small way, and in its own little way that gave us some sort of inspiration, motivation, and it was about that bigger picture, that higher purpose perhaps. And in a challenging year, we felt grateful to have something to come together around and to give us purpose, and as you know, fully talked about, and some of the senior lads there, that it was important to have that higher purpose and that sense of perspective around everything we did this year.
Right, I think we can go over to Temple Street. I think Ruby is with us. Ruby, good morning to you. How are you? Oh, we got Ariana with us. Hey, Ariana, how are you?
Good.
Whereabouts in Dublin are you from, Ariana?
Swords.
You're from Swords, right. And you're 6 years of age, is that right?
Yeah.
Ah, very good. And it turns out you're a big Dublin fan. I can see you've got your jersey on. Do you play football?
Yeah.
No, right. Well, maybe this is the time to get you in, because we've got two absolute legends of the game. Dessie Farrell, who has become one of the very rare people who has managed All-Irelands at minor, under-20s and senior, and Philly McMahon, who's got 8 All-Ireland medals. So, Ariana, this is top-level stuff here. Have you got any questions for the lads? Or Philly, would you like to talk to Ariana?
Hi, Ariana. First of all, I have to say I absolutely love your name.
Thank you.
And I hope you're having a lovely Christmas so far, and you're going to get loads of presents off Santi.
What's on your list, Ariana?
Rocky Top.
Right, very good. And have you been good?
Yeah.
Well, look, that's all anybody can ask for, I think. I think everybody's a little bit anxious this week because they're not sure if they've been good enough, but I've no doubt you have. Philly, you go into the hospitals every year and you see people like this who are sick, obviously, and you bring cups and you bring a bit of joy to them.
Yeah, it's something that I really look forward to every year after the All-Ireland. Obviously, I'm one of the players that can get up the next morning to do it, and it's and I do be always amazed with all the celebrations that goes on, how many lads do actually go to, because I'm still in a good state of mind. But yeah, it does. It's something, you know, it's so powerful to go in and to see the families and the individuals, and just to put a bit of a smile on their face is just incredible based off of sport. You know, it magnifies what you see when you're looking around the stands when the stadium is full, but to magnify that with somebody that's gone through their own little issues, it really does ground you, and it really makes the sport that special. You know, it's just incredible. Like, I suppose it's something that you'll always cherish. And when you're running up and down pitches and it's dark and cold and everything else, all those things come into your head.
I've no doubt, and it obviously is great to be able to help Temple Street raise awareness for exactly what they do. And you know, the photographs and the interviews that you guys give from the hospitals and the aftermath is always something that is important, both for Crumlin and for Temple Street as well. And people can donate through the Temple Street Foundation at templestreet.ie. Ariana, how are you getting on? What else are you looking forward to at Christmas? Excellent. I think we're just having a little bit of trouble with the sound to Temple Street, so we might try and fix that and see if we can speak to John over there. I think that's coming up next, so we're going to speak to John Doyle there as well. So if anybody wants to get involved this morning, 0879 180 180 is the number there. Dessie, the other thing I think that you know, we talked about the cultures. The players, sometimes we don't really get to know them that much until actually after the season is over. But you know, people like Philly, happy to give up their time and to go and to do the work of raising the profile of the hospitals and also all the other stuff that they do as well. Maybe that's something that the rest of the country takes a little bit for granted or doesn't know that much about.
Yeah, look, there's you know, the players are brilliant in that fashion. They're always willing to help, willing to support, very, very grounded, and again, it's that bigger picture that that other perspective that's really important, you know, and we're just, as a group, we're very disappointed, of course, not being able to go to Temple Street this year. It's become a tradition in recent years, and unfortunately we're not in a position to do it this year. But a big shout out to all the staff of Temple Street and you know, all the frontline workers this year. It's a hugely challenging time for everybody, but particularly you know, for any of us who've had kids, the thought and the notion of a sick child is something that's deeply, deeply moving, and the people there do amazing work, and we're very grateful for all that they do and the contribution that they make. We've got John Doyle with us now, the porter at Temple Street. John, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. Not too bad, thank you.
You might be able to talk to us a little bit about what the impact that the actual arrival of the Cup, both the hurlers and the footballers in recent years, has on the kids at Temple Street and the difference that it makes.
Well, I suppose on behalf of Temple Street and Crumlin and all across CHI, we all know that the euphoria after the holding of football finals is so immense. It's a great recognition for the lads, and it's also a great recognition that they come in and give their time freely to all our patients across CHI. We know this year has been difficult, but I have to commend each and every member of the GAA community for making it actually happen. Ariane and Ruby here this morning. We're all still ecstatic about the win. And as I say, there's nothing better than the visit of the McCarthy or Sam McGuire on the Monday to actually lift the spirits in town there.
Yeah, and again, like, it has been a really difficult year at the front lines, you know, so you're dealing with sick kids, but you're also dealing with all the precautions around COVID, which means that parents frequently, it's one parent for a limited amount of time. It's never the two parents. It's never the ability to kind of give comfort to these kids. So your role and the role of the people who are there at the front lines is absolutely magnified in an already tense and emotional situation for most people.
Well, we've seen this year, obviously, that we've followed the NEPID guidelines to the letter of the law. Healthcare has still continued to function to the best of its ability. And yes, it's been rather strange not being able to do the usual things that you normally would be doing. But even by following the guidelines that we've become accustomed to, we can still give back that unique CHI feeling to our patients and parents. So that hasn't gone away, thank God.
John, we saw Ariana there in the Dublin jersey. Was there a lot of Dublin jerseys around on Saturday? Was there joy around when they got over the line and won the All-Ireland?
Well, as I suppose you'll know that our population comes from 42 counties of Ireland, so we were trying to keep it very much low-key. There's always the victory team, and there's also those who don't make it. I suppose yesterday we went around and seen the delights, and obviously all the Dublin patients and their staff and parents. We also see it to have a quiet word and a nice word with the Mayo supporters and their children as well, because for us, healthcare is about the whole of Ireland and not just Dublin or Mayo.
Yeah, it's obviously you got to try and maintain some level of fairness, but like, it's, you know, I'd say a lot of the staff are Dubs fans, and it sounds like you might be one too.
Well, as I'm saying is this is just a phenomenal achievement that's gone on, and as I say, I am massively proud of being a Dub. I think each and every person acknowledges the work that the management team have put into it, and more importantly, the players, because they just seem time upon time to lift themselves and lift the whole country, if you want to call it. And as I say, I think at the end of the day, I think the whole country respects to this wonderful Dublin team.
Well, listen, you're doing great work, and if anybody, as I said, if anybody wants to donate, it is templestreet.ie is the place to do that. We're going to speak with Charlotte Dare in just a minute, but I do want to say thanks to Dessie for getting up this morning and coming on and doing this, and also to you, Philly, as well. And look, it is a phenomenal achievement, and congratulations to you both. One last question for you, Dessie. Now, I wonder, there's been a lot of conversation and a lot of noise about what the future holds for the GAA, and I'm sure you had to tune a lot of that out, while at the same time being aware of the fact that it was going on in the background. So do you need to address with the players what the debate raging about the future of Dublin and the question about funding and population and all that, or do you just completely try and park that and not have it be an impact for you?
Yeah, I think that's what we have to do, Ger. It's you disengage with that because it can end up being a distraction. I think I made the point after the game, and I know the players aren't in a position to say this themselves, and by their nature they wouldn't, but I think a lot of the narrative is inaccurate, that they haven't seen what the commitment and the dedication is like up close and personal over the last 12 months from these players. It's immense, you know, and you know, I just think there's a disservice done in many ways to these special bunch of players, and that's what sport is about in many ways. The essence of great teams is there's something special about them, and they're a pretty phenomenal group in terms of how they keep applying themselves, how they can continuously go to the well and seek out more and get more of themselves, and I'm sorry for them in many ways that narrative is out there, you know, and you know, we get it, of course, we understand it. It's important to have that debate about the GAA, the future of the GAA, and we don't want to stifle that or stymie that, but in some situations I think it's lost what these great players have done, and how they have become such a special group, and you know, I'm just happy maybe to give that a nod in that particular direction this morning, and thanks for asking the question. But for me, it's about the players, and they're an amazing group, and it's a special era for Dublin football. I remember all the barren years that we had, and this era is special, and they're a special bunch, and we're very grateful for them.
All right, Dessie, good stuff. Philly, thanks a million for joining us as well this morning. Cheers, lads.
Thanks, lads.
If you want to get in touch this morning, 0879 180 180 is the number. We're going to go back to Temple Street in just a moment, but let's hear from Mick Bowen, who managed the Dublin women's team to yet another All-Ireland title yesterday afternoon, his fourth in a row.
Mick, you must be absolutely delighted to achieve the 4 in a row. It's quite a few years of management for you.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm genuinely, the 4 in a row hasn't come into my mind at all, because genuinely I saw this as a standalone final in a year of years, like something like none of us have ever experienced before. We're just immensely proud of them to have represented themselves as well as they had, and hope that they gave some enjoyment to the people who support us throughout the year, who are watching on television at home. And look, we look forward to a Christmas now, a bit of downtime, and you know, reflect on the season that was.
And just speaking on that, do you think, obviously it was a different year in many ways, will this year stand out to you more than any, that there was no supporters here and that all the preparation and everything was so different?
Yeah, because it was another challenge. I mean, it wasn't the same enjoyment, there wasn't the same buzz in it that normally is associated with these days. But you know, in our quiet times, when we sit back and we reflect over things that we've done in our lifetime, to be able to, you know, run this one smoothly through the most difficult of times, and like the sacrifices that took place for people right across the length and breadth of the country to come to training, to mind each other, to sanitise, to keep their bubble that they were mixing in as small as possible, for their families not to be socialising. They were asking more of their group than, you know, most of us. So they were all massive factors. So when we reflect, we'll reflect on those moments with a lot of pride.
Brilliant, Mick. Thanks very much. Thank you. Thank you.
There's Mick Bowen there, obviously, in the aftermath, talking with Aishling. And look, I mean, they're not as dominant as the men's teams, and you would hope that between them that Armagh and Galway and Mayo come back, and that actually there's going to be a proper rivalry in the women's game, because it really needs it over the next couple of years.
And Cork, definitely, like the age profile of the team, as Aishling Moloney said earlier on, is good. The performance yesterday wasn't great. It had the right ingredients in certain areas. The early goal was amazing. It was a fantastic finish. And I guess they're going to come away from that pretty disappointed that 1-5 was their final tally after getting such an important early score in the game, which everybody knew was vital. So to score 5 points after that will be the disappointment. And like maybe Dublin as well, like when they score 110 themselves in an All-Ireland final, maybe that's the sort of score that was there for the taking. And maybe yesterday with no fans and maybe a strange year, that was the year where this team was there for the taking as well. So there'll be plenty of regrets. And I think you're right, maybe in the women's game, the charging pack behind them are probably looking in a bit better shape at the moment.
All right, just a reminder that the annual visits to the hospitals from the All-Ireland winners is a huge chance to raise some awareness around the brilliant work that happens at the children's hospitals in Ireland, but they are also absolutely in need of help as well. If you get over to templestreet.ie, you'll be able to see how you can donate and help at the Children's Health Foundation at Temple Street. And the Director of Nursing, Charlotte O'Dwyer, is with us this morning. Charlotte, good morning to you.
Good morning, how are you?
It's obviously very disappointing under the circumstances not to be able to get the reigning All-Ireland champions in with the cups, but we all understand why that's not happening. And yet at the same time, you know, the teams are mad keen to help out in any way they can, which is a clear sign that they really benefit from this as well.
Absolutely, it's really disappointing this morning. We're normally all geared up, ready to greet them as they come through the door, and certainly for the patients who, you know, sometimes can be here for long periods of time and really struggle with the monotony of a day-to-day piece. To have something exciting like this happening is really disappointing that we're not able to. And as you say, we all understand why that can't happen. But at the same time, great to see the excitement that's building up outside of that, and people, you know, full of excitement for the teams from yesterday, and all of that was happening on the wards even without known that the team was coming in today. So yes, a very different year, I think, for everybody.
Yeah, and how has it actually been for you guys?
I suppose it's very different, absolutely. Everything is very different. So normally at this time of the year, we are full of festive cheer. There's activities happening every day of the week. The children are getting all excited. Santa comes to visit. We have lots of activities going on literally every day from the beginning of December. So that's all very different. We're doing our very best to try and keep everybody's spirits up, and doing a little bit of, you know, things that we can do at ward level where it's not requiring huge amounts of staff coming in. Santa's still going to visit on Christmas Day, without a doubt. It's going to be a little bit different. He's not going to be able to talk to everybody, but he'll certainly come in and spend some time with some of the children that have been here for a long period of time, in particular, because those are the ones who are not going to be able to get home for Christmas. There
must also just be a level of exhaustion amongst the staff. Like, we all are fairly exhausted about COVID and the precautions and the constant existential fear that grips all of us at the moment. But you guys at the front line have had it really from day one. Yeah, you know, you're right. Everybody's very tired. The virus is the only one that's not tired. So I think it has been a very exhausting 9 months for everybody. Everybody's really looking forward to the break over Christmas. And I think, you know, that's probably going to change now with increases in activity and viruses out in the community. So that may change what people thought was going to be, you know, a quiet time at home with families. So that absolutely is adding additional stress for people. We're seeing a lot of stress, you know, in staff and in some of the children that are coming into the service because of the COVID. Yeah, and look, I think that's the other aspect of all this that, you know, we all probably need to talk a little bit more about. It's been kind of constant numbers and what's happening, but the impact that this is going to have, the long tail of the disease, and I don't just mean the people who get it, but on kids and how they socialise and how they speak to each other, and on the staff who are facing it every day. Absolutely. And, you know, we've invested in new ways of communicating that we never thought were possible, you know, Zoom meetings and Skype calls and, you know, things like that we never would have used before. So it's good in one sense, but then it takes away that personal, you know, communication that is vital for people's mental health. So that's definitely a struggle for everybody. Yeah, no, 100%. And look, you know, again, we haven't got a huge opportunity to highlight the work that you guys have done because we don't have our reporters down at the hospital talking to the patients, but also talking to the players in that. So we're just trying to help a little bit in any way that we possibly can. And so I want to thank you for all the work that you've done and for allowing us to be a part of this morning as well.
Yeah, and thank you for raising it, because you're right. You know, they do a fantastic job here, and without the foundation and without the support from all our supporters throughout the year, we wouldn't be able to continue to provide, you know, those little niceties that the children really enjoy at Christmas, and to make it a little bit easier for them to be here in the hospital. So, you know, thank you to all our supporters and for everybody who's willing to raise the requirements that we have here in the hospital. So that's really welcome. So thank you very much.
Charlotte, thanks a million. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thank you very much. Take care.
That's Charlotte O'Dwyer there, the Temple Street Director of Nursing. And as I said, if you head to templestreet.ie, you'll be able to see how you can donate and help at the Children's Health Foundation at Temple Street. It's time to announce our competition winner, a one-for-all gift card from your local post office, the perfect last-minute gifting option for family, friends and colleagues this Christmas. They're going to be available for purchase for post offices nationwide right up until closing time, which is 1 o'clock on Christmas Eve. You'll be getting there at about 10 to 1, will you, to do your Christmas shopping? This morning we had a €100 voucher to give away. Congratulations to Sean Fagan, who correctly identified this voice.
If something will happen, then it will happen. There are so many rumours in the newspapers, and it's really funny. You know?
We know that is Jurgen Klopp, today's mystery voice. Another chance to win tomorrow. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Give you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We'll see you tomorrow at 7:30. Take care.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what